Welcome to the 10th of June workshop of Council. Just a reminder, it's being recorded for transparency and openness purposes. A number of items tonight being discussed, and we've got a number of guests to assist us. We have Chris Gregory from NBN Co. He's here tonight for the first item. We have also outer space landscape designer Kathy Bowden's coming in tonight to help us with Memorial Gardens. Council's team leader, PAC, Elizabeth Giolia, is coming along to assist us tonight as well. We've got Jen here tonight to help us with economic development matters, and Carolyn Ramsey will drop in at the end of the workshop to brief us on some as well. So quite a bit to get through tonight. We only have one apology tonight, and that is from Christina. I haven't heard of any other apologies as well.
I think Mark is
Mark Root would be away tonight. Apology, yes. We'll move on to the rest of the workshop. Are there any comments on the notes of the previous workshop?
Alan's still due to come.
Alan's here now, just walked in.
Oh.
Welcome, Alan. Okay, any comments on the notes of the previous workshop? If not, we'll move straight into the first item tonight, which is the presentation from NBN Co. Chris, did you?
So here tonight we have Chris Gregory, the Corporate Affairs Manager of Australia of NBN Co. He's here to give us a brief update on the progress of the rollout of the fibre to the premises, which is occurring throughout the Prospect area. He'll give us an overview of how that's progressing and also how NBN Co. are looking at engaging with the community to ensure that there's maximum exposure to the implications of finalising the NBN rollout. We've been in discussion at an administrative level of how we tap into and support that community engagement strategy so that our community is best positioned to realise the benefits of the fibre premises that's supported by the NBN rollout. I'll hand over to Chris now to lead you through the presentation. All we want here is good news.
Mark, Mayor, elected members, it's a pleasure as always to be here with you. It's been quite a few months. As you may be aware, I've been out of the picture due to some health issues, but slowly getting back on track. The key message tonight is we are progressing. We know that from September we had a change of government, and that initiated a national change in policy for the NBN, which is still being felt in terms of us as a government business and how that alters what we do and what we are able to do. But primarily what it means for Prospect, you are amongst the 20-odd% of the country who will continue and get completed a fibre connection to the premises. So you are in that 20% of the nation. We have a new chair, we have a new board, we have a new CEO, we have a new executive management in place as well, all driving the change in the federal NBN policy, which is about providing the NBN in the most cost-effective way to the taxpayer as quickly as possible. So yes, we are and remain in a transition stage, and we certainly will be for the remainder of this year more than likely. But the challenge for us, as I met with Chris and Jen and some of the other staff earlier today, is to continue the momentum, to keep things progressing despite that change of policy and despite all those other things that are going on. So what we are trying to do and working very hard within Prospect area, but also with the Teacher Gully Council and the City of Onkaparinga primarily, where we had already had works commenced, business as usual. So what I'd like to share with you is an update on what that looks and feels like, and then touch on the next steps, which really is about your ratepayers starting to receive from us and the process we have in place, the steps they need to take, the implications of getting an NBN connection and starting to live that 20% dream that I know we all hope to have. So, some reminders, because it's been probably 7, maybe 8 months since I've been in front of council. So, refresher 101 for 3 minutes. Firstly, you will have noticed that we are emphasising more than the internet in terms of NBN. The NBN is about your fixed line service, whether that is broadband services or whether that is telephone or monitored alarm or medical alarm, whatever it may be, or FPOS service for a business. It is all those things. Anything that is a fixed line service that is will be affected by NBN fibre. We have a lot of lessons learnt from last month. We finished the first 15 nationally, about 19,000 premises. Went through the final disconnection process. We call it migration or disconnection, where the copper in those areas actually got decommissioned, got turned off because the fibre had been in place at least for 18 months. It's a redundant old network, replaced by an upgrade service, move everyone across. If you haven't moved, here's the ramifications around that. If you need to move, if you need assistance to move, we support that as well, as do the federal government. So we've got a lot of good lessons learned from how to improve that going forward. So you guys being in that second release trial, that second release state nationally, is some ways, I've said this before, probably a good thing because some of the lessons learned we can apply here. So this is really to remind us that, look, NBN, alarms and emergency systems, monitor alarms, lift phones in vertical complexes. We deal with that with Walkerfield Council because part of the Prospect Build covers that area. Monitored fire alarms, FPOS, fax machines, that kind of stuff. Reminder of the build process for your council, it does not change. Despite the change of government, despite the change in NBN policy to a multi-technology mix, which is fibre to the node, which could be HFC cable or satellite or fixed wireless, we still have the same process with your area, which is some planning, design, repair of the existing passive infrastructure, the pits and pipes, the construction piece, testing and activation, and then we go live. What I've done here is a little bit of nuance just to reinforce the fact that since we last met, we know that Synthio, as the primary service contractor, is only doing one module in this area now. That's the first one. The other 5 will be completed by SA Power Networks, who came on board with us in August last year. So you'll see those. Telstra still have responsibility for that repair of the infrastructure because it's theirs. We're just leasing access to it. And in fact, that's been completed for all of the fibre modules for this council. And then, of course, in terms of the actual construction, the physical construction, laying cables and that kind of stuff, Synthio and their subbies will be doing some of that work. But then again, for the other 5 modules, it's SA Power Networks. Except for, I don't know, we've briefed operational stuff around this thing called MDUs. I think I may have touched on it briefly last time we met. 2 types of connections for NBN. SDU, single dwelling unit, a home. MDU, multi-dwelling units. So that's a complex premises. It could be anything from a school, a hospital, a commercial precinct where there's one owner and multiple subtenants within it. North Park is a pretty simple example of that. We have a separate contractor, Downer, who runs that program on our behalf, basically. Very complex environment. And the key reason behind it is we, as a company, have to approach and engage with the owner and or occupier and or body corporate of that complex premises to get permission to come on the premises, permission to do an assessment of what infrastructure is there, permission to do a survey and design a connection for them. So different world. That activity, interestingly, is already going on in advance of this other construction, because what we have learned nationally is this multi-dwelling unit engagement has a longer lead time than doing a single dwelling connection, which makes obvious logical sense. So that's why we do that in advance. And that is progressing well, as far as I understand and been told. The process remains unchanged. Tick boxes, look, we're progressing. We've completed planning, design, remediation. We have started construction works in 2 of the 6 modules for this area. And this is what it looks like. I I'm hoping you will receive the notification I sent around late last week about a change to our online maps. As we know, last year they were all orange when area started to work. That was changed at the election time to do two things. Number one, our online information to the public will only show brown where construction has actually commenced. A contract has been signed, work has commenced, so physical fibre lane. Like today out at North Gates, no, North Park, sorry I keep getting it wrong every single time, North Park Shopping Centre. Our contractor Cynthia and their subbies, Excel, were out there laying some distribution fibre. There was a huge drum of green sheathed fibre being laid. Because a contract had been signed to do that. It creates a very clear picture, says, hey, work has commenced in these areas. 7 to 9 months later, sometimes a bit sooner, but on average 7 to 9 months later, finished, ready for service so people can connect. The green, which is, we went live with this late last week, basically says this is where fixed line repair work has either commenced or is finished or is, so another separate contract has been signed for that to happen. So that really reflects the Telstra repair, that Telstra remediation stage for these areas. And for you, that has been completed as well. But people can get a visibility now. They know that Telstra repair comes first for the fixed line service. These will go brown once the next contract has been signed. So sequentially 2, 4, 5 and 6, that's the order. And what does that look like in terms of the modules, the area and our forecast ready for service? So construction completed, someone can make that call and secure a connection. So we are looking at, and this is like the end of the month, September for the first area, December for number 2, January, February, a little bit later for number 5, and number 6 isn't in your council area, so everything.
4 and 5 both got Nailsworth. Where's that on your map?
Because it's portions of. So this is number 4, and this is number 5. So portions of falls in the council area.
The pink number 1, where the L-shaped cutout is.
Yeah.
Just left, no, above. Go back to where you were. Up to the other. Turn right.
Other corner.
No.
Other side.
Right. There. Now go down. Right. What's that street there? No, not that one. The one sideways.
Here.
No. The L shape. Where the bottom of the L shape.
It's Corville.
Oh, here.
There. That. Yeah. What? No. That street going that way.
What's that?
That's it. Yeah. That's crucial because that's incredibly close to where I live.
Councillor, send me your details, I can let you know. As you remember, I don't know the street name right now.
I've got a feeling it's Ballville because that's where the exchange is at the top of that street. So I would imagine.
As you remember, these are defined nothing to do with council boundaries, nothing to do with suburban boundaries. It's all to do with the number of premises, around about 3,000, and how we can best engineer and roll that out. So it looks a bit weird, particularly when I go to Adelaide City Council and say, hey, you've got one facility, one addressable property within this, and it's the aquatic centre. And in number 6, they've got some tennis courts. But if there's a copper-based phone service going to there that's active, we will connect it if that user requires it or wants it. Fascinating module for me because there are 5 councils I need to work with. There's Walkerville, you guys, Charles Sturt have got 300 odd premises over here. Port Adelaide Enfield have got a few as well. I'll be sharing this slide deck through Chris tomorrow as well. Look, a reminder on the equipment, because there's been a change since we last caught up as well. Externally, utility box goes basically the same route as the copper and adjacent or where the existing Telstra connection point is, whether that's underground or aerial. Internally, connection box. This power supply unit is optional now from 1 July. Unless you're a Priority Systems customer, then you're required to take it because it's the only way that we can guarantee a phone service at all times if there's a power failure. It's part of the universal service obligation. What we find through the consultation feedback was everyone said, look, we understand why you've got that, but actually when power goes out at the moment, what do? We get a mobile phone until the power comes back on. So we want that to be optional instead of previously it was mandatory. So
Put the PowerPoint then nearby, or
previously you had to have it connected to a GPO, but now we will accept it being plugged into a power board or an extension lead if it's not close to a power socket. This is 1.2 metres long, that cable.
What's the priority, what you call them? Priority
Assistance
customers? Yep.
Under the TIO, someone can register with Telstra if they need special assistance, or it's normally someone with a disability or a health issue primarily. I can get some information to share if you're interested.
Oh, that's okay, that's cool.
So that's what it looks like. Also, you don't have to take that. So the minimum footprint would be this. What we've done is develop a cover that's got a couple of clips on it that little kids can't push to protect everything. You can stomp on that and it won't break, and you can paint it. So again, we're responding to consumer requests around this. This is actually made in South Australia as well, so that's a good thing. A quick reminder of how it may look internally being set up. So inside, that's a faceplate from the outside, fibre coming in, connects to your connection box, power supply if you want it, with a battery inside it, and then you plug your gateway, your Telstra T-Hub or your Internode Bob or whatever it is, your gateway or router, wireless router, whatever it is, into the NBN box, and then your gear plugs into that, whatever it is, whether it's wirelessly or cable related. This is the conversation we have once we're ready for service. We provide some information to end users. Think about where you want your equipment to be and what you're going to connect into it. So comm stuff. So we have, don't get scared by this. We share it, there'll be plenty of time to get through this as we talk. A local area marketing plan, a LAM, is what we call it. So there are things we are required to do under the agreement that set up NBN and its rollout originally, called the PIM, the Public Information Migration. So there's things that we have to do to advise everybody in advance of what's going on. One of those things has actually been all the communication that we've been doing so far. The DL envelopes to let people, letters to let people know that we're about to construct in the area, the fact that we are constructing, the fact that we've finished. There'll also be some correspondence soon around the next stage of the build. So that will go on, that will continue as the other modules progress through their construction and completion phase. I've been doing work with Council, as you know, around the other channels, which is community and business engagement outside of this. So then we move into next stages. So once the modules go live, ready for service, this is the world of joy that we operate under. So public relations, major switch on event. We'll be organising that, and we'll liaise with Council and then get Council involved. A lot of online stuff we do, direct mail to the end user. I've got some examples of what this local advertising looks like. And Chris and Jen and I, and previously Justin and previously Steve, have been working in this environment. Yep. So that's very much where we target at-risk groups, particular business entities. Because one of the things I want to do is work with the business community to set that expectation that often what happens, and I've seen it, so it's battle scars, suddenly an area goes live, the business wants to get connected immediately, but because of that multi-dwelling unit complexity, there's often a delay in that happening, and I just want to make sure that your business community understand, but also they need to make some very clear thinking in advance of that. How are they going to manage their fax? How, if they have that fax service, how are they going to deal with their FPOS or ATMs? What about monitored alarms and back-to-base alarms? It's fairly straightforward what they need to do, but they may not know what they need to do. So part of my role is to help progress that through. At the moment, we have a position where once an area is defined as being live, ready for service, The date is set, and 18 months later the copper gets decommissioned, gets turned off. Not all copper services, ISDN, and there are some other services that maintain. Normally they're business grade until that business provider of that service come up with an alternative solution or turn it off. It's their choice. We're just building the road as always. What you choose to drive on it is your choice as a business. So 18 months later, bang, gets turned off. But before that, it's not a bang. We've done some analysis and in the Wollonga, which got turned off a couple of weeks ago. I think we had 24 individual correspondence letter drops were done to each and every premises. We did 2 weeks of door knocking. We know Telstra did a couple of weeks of door knocking. We had prints, radio, the community work that I did. We had our NBN Discovery truck out there, which is decommissioned now. So many things. So we know where the risk is. We know what we need to do to manage that. With the first 15, we've gone through that process. The next 16 are between now and the end of the year. So we're going to have plenty of runs on the board to tweak and refine by the time we get to turning off stage for your area. A little bit more detail about what that Ready for Service campaign looks like. So when we hit an area to go live, on average it's about a 5-week period of intense engagement, and then it's low-level ongoing. Media events, radio, local print ads, display boards, mobile kiosk. I've got a graphic of what that looks like, a kiosk here, direct mail of course. I'm raising this because I know Jen and Chris and I already started the conversation around what can council do. Well, there's a lot you can do. You've got the NBN interest database you already have together. I can help support that, providing you the right content to push out. Through Peter at the Digital Hub, we're already looking at getting me down to just be that Q&A guy, run a series of community sessions, just to ask those questions. How do I get connected? Are you going to dig up my roses? Do I need to change my phone? What about my phone number? What kind of services are out there? Those kind of things that are quite concerning in this change. Look, just wrapping up, an example of the Ready for Service comms. There's a letter with a bunch of FAQs on the back. There's an information flyer which you've got a copy of there. Print media, we'll use that wherever we need to. And the variations, we often theme it around demographics at different times as well. Our experiential kiosk is an example of one. This was, we ran one down in the Ordinga Seaford area. So what normally happens with this, we allocate it for a 10-day period, Monday, a weekend and the following week. Two ambassadors there to answer and address the questions. And my job is to brief these people before so they know the local context as much as possible. And I show up as well. Other Ready for Service comms, some things we absolutely learned previously was, look, we needed to spend a bit more attention and support those on medical alarms. What does it mean? And how to go about making the change. Also security alarms over the NBN, back to base monitors and things like that. How do they work? Well, here's the right information. So that's the comms piece, the structure and some examples of what we'll see. Look, the next step is continuing the construction for fibre. Yeah, you're in that 20% of the world, which is great. Look, this first thing, bulk drop activity, construction build activity. So construction build activity is laying the fibre up the streets and the local network. This bulk thing, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. Up until now, we've effectively been running on what we call a demand connection. So we notify when an area is ready and people can connect. I'm sitting in my home. I call up my service provider and say, hey, I want an NBN connection. I demand it. That initiates a visit from a contractor to go on site to the premises and try and make that connection. Now, that connection is from the pit in the streets, either an underground conduit following the existing communications route, pit, external connection box, and internal connection box. Right? Now, what happens if you can't get through that underground conduit? Maybe it's not there, it's too small, or it's blocked. That then turns into a held order for a civil crews to come and make that repair work. And then you can get the final connection. So that's where we live at the moment. And it's always been the case because the contracts were originally put in place was to build the distribution network from the exchange up the streets and from the cabinet in the street to the pit. It was not the contract for the pit to the property. I know we've had that conversation with council before. So bulk drop is a different. Bulk drop is, and we are trialling it, about to trial it in Modbury 2. We are already delivering it in Seaford and Aldinga. So again, good lessons learned. And it's likely to be the norm going forward. Bulk drop means for your module number 1, it gets constructed. Bulk drop says we will notify using the Telecommunications Act a whole suburban area saying we are going to be coming up your street sometime in the next 30 to 40 days. We will automatically do the build connection from the pit to the external utility box on your property. We do that automatically unless you tell us not to, unless you defer it. So you can say, I don't want NBN ever, and we still, our business plan says around about 7% will always do that because they just want to be a wireless home, wireless premises. Or, hey, I'm going away for 3 months. I don't want you to come on property until I'm there. That's okay. Or we will do it. So what that does for us, and that'll be the norm going forward, is it avoids that we're complete, you can get connected, oh, someone shows up, oh, I can't connect you because the civil works haven't been done, just trying to roll it all into one. So we're in a transition stage. So you're going to have examples in this council area where someone will call up and demand a connection. Fine, yeah, we can do that. Oh, actually, if you mind waiting 30 days, we've got our bulk drop program coming through your streets to do the fibre lead-in and the external utility box. When that's completed, you get notified again, and all you do is contact your service provider to do the internal box install, which is much faster, very straightforward, no delays because of the potential for a civil works repair stage. So that'll be underground and aerial.
Sorry, Chris, I'm confused. So the internal stuff, the boxes that you showed us before, the stuff that goes inside the house, you guys don't connect that, the service provider connects that.
Do that.
So what were you just talking about there?
All the external piece. So our contractor will do the fibre from the pits to the external connection box and under the bulk drop model and no more. Then you as a consumer call Telstra, Internode, IONET, whoever you want to be your provider, and you book them to come and do the internal box installation.
One that you showed us before.
Yep. Yeah. Sure. Yep.
I thought you were asking a question. What happens if you think the telephone comes from a telephone
pole?
If it goes across instead of going underground?
Well, we know that, and it will be in air. We follow the same communications route. So if it's underground, we go underground, and if it's aerial, we'll follow that same route. We come aerial.
You know that. Can you tell me what mine is?
If you give me your address, I can find that out for you, Councillor. Yeah.
Just walk outside your house and have a look.
No?
If you can't see it, it's underground.
Yeah, that's a fair call.
I don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
I think it's what it says.
Well, you might be looking in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
One of those two options. There's other houses there we can stand. I don't know what that is.
We can share your details through Chris. We're happy to find that out for you, definitely. So, look, finishing off, ready for service engagement, the local marketing plan and the conversations we already have started. And, you know, identifying the business leaders forum is a good example. And doing the community engagement activities through the digital hub is another one. And, you know, you guys are brilliant at this. We know you won your national award. It's just progressing that. Yeah. And at-risk community groups is something that we'll work with you guys as well to identify. Yes.
With alarm systems and medical alerts,
Yes.
from what you're saying, it's not a straight, transparent connection. So what costs are, particularly medical alert, where I suppose you've got probably a more ageing population, what costs might they be up with to additionally program or whatever they have to do?
So what the steps around that is you as the user contact the provider of that service and equipment and say, what are you prepared for the NBN changeover? We, for over 2 years now, have been engaging with that industry. As an example, RAA and their monitored medical alarm services, what they've done is they've come to us. We have a test bed environment, a fibre-ready world for hardware to plug in, and also their systems, their software systems, and they have tested and validated that their equipment works on the NBN and their service works on the NBN. So then it's simply a matter of migrating across, not new costs for equipment or anything like that. The issue we have is, I like the roads analogy, seems to be the one that resonates most commonly with everyone, is we're like the Department of Transport. We build the road. It happens to be an 8-lane highway that never gets congested. We don't control what model or what make of vehicle you drive on that road. What we do is we offer a product suite that says phone services will work, broadband services will work, IP-based services will work. What we can't control and can't dictate is every single piece of equipment that's out there.
Sure. No, I do understand the highway. I guess what I was asking you, is it your experience that, for example, people with Medical Alert cost them $28,000 extra?
No,
I know that's not, but are you aware that there is a fee that they...
Anecdotally, I've heard nothing at all about a cost.
I thought there should be. It's just that you were very pointed when you spoke about it, so I just wondered if there's a reason.
It's a step that, yeah, absolutely, because what we don't want is someone's monitored alarm, especially medical, to suddenly not start functioning.
Yeah.
We need to move on soon. David, you've got...
A couple of questions. First one is, thank you for the update, by the way. It's getting closer. I see people now, so I'm understood. The go-live date looks like the first area end of September. You're after our assistance to cross-promote, which I think generally we're pretty aligned to, happy to do. But of course we need to have confidence that when we go to promote it that there is actually something happening. So when should we start to talk to people about, you'll get a call or you'll have an interaction or someone will knock on your door, or when's all that going to start happening in the first area, and then have you thought about how we structure that in areas 2, 3 and 4, because it won't all be at the same time?
Correct, yeah. That local marketing plan, that kicks in. So what happens is when construction is complete, no one knows about it externally. It's an internal process because our operations part of the business have to take over and own that network because they're running it from this point forward. They do a quality assurance process to identify is everything working as designed, as constructed, where are there issues. Maybe there's an MDU that's yet to be completed, or maybe there's a certain area that we know we need to do a little bit of extra repair work to get us over the line. So all that happens. Once that is signed off, that's when we hit the ready for service. I get a weekly go-to-market report basically that says this is our forward plan of when we are distributing the communications to the end user. So I let you know in advance of that it's happening. So you know, elected members in council, that your constituents in that number 1 area are going to start getting some communication from NBN Co. Say, hey, your area is now live. So we are talking at the moment, end of September. What I try and do in the business is get as much forward notice for you as we possibly can.
Yep, I can see, I'll note that. We don't have a comms department sitting here waiting for complex signalling, so you have to work out how best to use what little we can offer. I'm certainly happy to support us cross-promoting. Yep. Second question is, I understand our southern neighbour, Adelaide City Council, had their start date taken off the map. It was going to be later this year. Now they don't have a start date at all, which sounds a bit tragic, really, given they're the city. Is there any news on when they are going to be serviced by fibre?
No, there's not. The reason they were taken off the program is because with the change of government, there was a change in NBN policy and a change in how the information is displayed for the public to see. So they sit within the a multi-technology mix environment which says we will deliver NBN grade services as quickly as we can, as most cost effectively as we can within the 29.5 billion public equity funding that are allocated to us as a company. So at the moment the next milestone for us will be middle of this year, hopefully around July. Our corporate plan is going to be released, and that will have some better visibility about 6 strategic reviews that have gone on for us. So there's a cost-benefit analysis, a legislative one, which is ongoing, structural one about what we do and how we do it. Adelaide City Council is likely, like most CBD areas, to progress in a FTTB, fibre to the basement model. They haven't been confirmed yet, but it's likely because it's got a lot of multi-storey. The best way to deliver them is get fibre from the exchange to the basement of that large facility, and then we use existing copper to deliver VDSL, which is very fast broadband, services to those. We're trialling that program interstate at the moment, both fibre to the basement and fibre to the node, which utilises existing copper, and then fibre from a cabinet back to the exchange. So
They're going to lag us by some considerable distance for the sound, because we're going live in September. You haven't even started design work on that.
well, there'll be redesign works required, but yes, yep, that's correct.
That's all I have.
Right.
No?
Just one last one, which might not be up. Our area, which, whatever numbers, our area of Prospect, to your knowledge, have we finally got rid of the known asbestos out of all the various pits and where cables are going, etc.? And there will always be ones you might not be from, but to your knowledge, have we got rid of what was supposed to?
Yes, to my knowledge, yep. So what we know in the asbestos environment is that asbestos in the Telstra infrastructure has been known for decades. On average, around 10 to 20% of their pits and ducts have asbestos concrete within them. We don't need to access and change or take out all of those, but it primarily happens during the Telstra repair stage. That's finished, so it's done and dusted. Is there an ongoing program and monitoring? Absolutely, yeah.
Done and dusted might not be the word to use.
Last question from Monica.
Just another silly question, going back to your service provider installing the internal boxes. What sort of deal is there? Like, if they don't want to do it because they think it's too costly for them, is there any cost to the householder, or is there some sort of deal with NBN that they engage their workers to come out and fix it?
So at the moment there is not a deal. NBN Co's requirement is to get a fibre connection and the equipment to enable that service to you if you demand it, if you want it. And that's the fibre, external box and internal box. Yep. What the open market does then in terms of enabling that service and what products you want is up to the open commercial market. So what we see, this is where it gets a little bit, oh, hang on, because NBN Co is our formal position. NBN connection and the installation of the NBN Co equipment is free of charge, and that remains the case. It's our job, our responsibility, and we own that equipment. 2 examples of how it works in reality is Telstra say, we will come and connect you, and we will stay until the connection is completed. And they charge a fee for that. We don't control that, but they charge a fee for that.
They do charge a fee for that?
They do, yes. Yep. Internode, as an example, offer 2 choices. They'll say, we'll send you out the gear in the mail and call us up when you get it, and we'll talk you through connecting their router into the NBN box and tell you which plug to put it into and turn it on. Or, if you want, we'll have someone come out and there will be a fee for that.
I think I'm misunderstanding because when I'm talking about the internal box, I'm talking the big one with the cover that you can jump on, that one.
Yep.
So you provide all of that and you connect all of that?
We provide that, and that. We install, and that is all
Standing use.
So you're doing some work inside the house?
correct. Yep.
That's your question.
Yep, I misunderstood you.
That yellow line's the wall.
Yep, that's the wall.
That's okay, I misunderstood you. I thought you meant you got your service provider to come and do that.
Oh, we do this. Service provider will, if you want, come and hook their gear in a few hours. which is that example.
Okay. I
So-
misunderstood. Yeah.
I was confused as well, because you said we're going to take the service to the outside of the house, and then later on you call your service provider who does the inside work.
Yeah.
So you're saying that there's inside work to put a modem in or whatever, but there's inside work for NBN code.
Correct.
You'll do that at what point? Same day or by appointment?
Try to do it on the same day. When you call for that and demand that connection, the best case scenario is we do everything at once, which is the lead-in, external box, internal box.
Okay, yeah, I was lost too.
Okay, we need to move on to other topics tonight. So just by way of summary, it's been a long journey for Prospect and it's good to see progress. It's great that Prospect is part of the 20% of the nation to get fibre to the premises, as we all know, and the work we did earlier on has paid dividends for that. Chris has been really helpful all the time that I've known in giving us all the information he's able to, and thanks again for coming on tonight. So could you join with me in thanking Chris?
As always.
No worries.
You give a round of applause and it works.
I'll be doing the Chris Gregory happy dance up the Prospect.
I'll bet you will.
Just got a 2-minute break while we get the next presentation organised.
We're 3
Close the tree.
I'll move to Chris and maybe he'll come back for a quick 5-minute update when we're ready.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Is that next? Right.
How many
More
employees?
estate. Yeah.
I'll move.
Cheers for that.
I'll
You're
move
right.
from here. Yeah.
Stop the track there.
Okay. Thanks, that worked okay.
Always encouraging.
I was listening, not turning, and I suddenly thought, shit, Bruce is interrupting. So I turned around to have a look and he wasn't there, so I'm not sure why he came in the first place.
Okay, we might move on with the workshop if we can, please. I just want to say before I start, I failed to mention that we have Christina, Mark and Scott as apologies for tonight. So,
And Bruce.
Bruce said he had to go for work reasons.
no worries. Next item is in relation to Memorial Gardens Place-Based Design Stage 2. And with us tonight we have Kathy and Lyndon from Outer Space.
Hi.
And Brendan, did you want to do the introduction? Please?
Brief,
Human beings to me.
Outer Space.
Just to clarify, we're landscape architects.
Yeah.
So, elected members may recall a previous workshop where we discussed the design work for Stage 2 of Memorial Gardens. And from that meeting, we've acted upon a requirement to speak with the community garden people and also Prospect Lions, and have also conducted 2 community consultations, largely with groups of children, both at Terrific Prospect and also at the first Twilight concert we set up there as well. So that was a requirement that we've acted upon, and indeed Grace Fitzpatrick was here earlier tonight. Oh, still here? There you are. In her capacity and interest as the chair of the community gardens, and since we've been speaking to Grace, that she's certainly got an interest in the project. So tonight, drawing upon the information gained from these discussions and the consultations, Kathy and Lyndon can present some further design work tonight, and also discuss some broad concepts. And where this is sort of heading towards is that we're sort of wanting to head towards a preferred design concept, which can then we'll go to a council meeting and then be put out to community consultations. So certainly tonight is all about the consultation information and where we're up to at the moment. So over to Lyndon and Kathy.
So
Yep.
jump in. Before we get excited about lovely things, what's our budget position on this project, and does the presentation fit the
The budget which that council put for next year's budget was $112,000, which includes $42,000 grant money, and council also put in a budget of $65,000 for the heritage shelter upgrade, which is, although not directly relating to the project, as you'll see from tonight's discussion, there is a relationship there. And so essentially $112,000 next year's proposed budget, of course.
That's in the draft budget.
Correct, yeah.
So just to clarify, our presentation tonight is we're going to just inform you of, just remind you, what's happened in stage 1, and we want to discuss with you some ideas for developing the final concept for stage 2. So we're it's not about presenting the concept for stage 2. It's about getting your some feedback from the councillors as well in terms of
So my name's Lyndon. We were engaged by council as a part of stage 1, and that consisted of community consultation, development of the concept, and also documentation. So now we've been engaged to develop concept for stage 2. As you're aware, this is an aerial photograph of Prospect Memorial Garden, and this is the scope of the playground which we're discussing today. There was a master plan report in 2010 that identified Prospect Memorial Gardens as a need to develop it as a regional park. It's currently the only regional park in council area, and so it's important that we've identified that we need to upgrade that to that classification level. So this is the concept master plan which was developed in stage 1. The grey area are work that's been completed to date, which consisted of the mound, the maintenance slide, some picnic settings, furniture, upgrade to park network. And when we documented this, we had in mind, we documented it with some particular play equipment in mind that we were going to document as part of the second stage. Subsequently, a shelter has been installed in that play area, as well as another piece of equipment, a carousel. So it's an opportunity to look at alternatives to the play equipment that was proposed in the first stage.
and also an opportunity to revisit the concept for stage 2 as well. This was developed, I think it was 2011 or 2011.
Right, yep.
Yeah. So it's been a couple of years, 2 or 3 years since we originally did this, and there's been some more consultation done as well. So and we've had the community garden established. At the time when we first did the concept, the community garden was an idea and it hadn't been established yet. So now there's the opportunity to incorporate some ideas and connections with the community garden.
So just giving you a background to that concept, there's an emphasis on sensory planting and formal planting. Bit of something which arose out of the consultation was the idea to develop a theme, and we took a couple of themes to that consultation, and the theme which was most popular was the Enchanted Garden, hence the toadstools. So there was the idea of creating a sense of discovery and sensory planting, as well as natural play and indigenous planting. There was a proposal for some sort of custom artistic gate and fence around the playground. The idea of a maze, not such a formal hedge maze, but maybe something less informal, more informal. and obviously the connection to the community garden and the orchard and those types of ideas. So this is the play equipment that was selected in the first stage as well, and it included a carousel, which is going to be the feature item. These are just some photos of the stage 2 area, and so the interfaces between the surrounding areas are important. Obviously, the interface with the stage 1 playground, the heritage listed shelter, the open space, and memorial gate for community gardens, which we've discussed. And then the second stage of community consultation was undertaken by Council, and this is just a snapshot of the consultation findings. So that were the top 10 images, which were identified as the community's favourite items. Some of these items we had in our original concept, and we can incorporate into our concept development as well. And then when we were engaged as part of stage 2, our feeling from Council was that the community and Council wanted something iconic, something which would stick in the minds of users. And 2 projects which were brought to our attention, sorry, not brought to our attention, but were highlighted, was Bonython Park and Helicopter Park, and both of those reserves are very good assets for the communities. But also they have that iconic piece of equipment which people can remember and I guess cherish, have a sense of ownership over. So coming back to Prospect Memorial Gardens, we're looking at I guess developing that theme of the Enchanted Garden or some sort of Wonderland Park, that type of theming, something iconic. So I'm just going to present a couple of options for play equipment. First one is a company called Spielart. They're out of Germany. They use hardwood Robinia. There's a lot of this stuff in Europe. Australia's now got European standards, playground standards. So what Spielart are really good at is the theming. And so they do these quirky, bespoke play items, really unique, add a richness to the landscape. So if we went down this path, I think you could get something really special that enhanced that Enchanted Garden theme. The second option is a company called Berliner, again out of Germany, and this is a treehouse concept, which is a new item. Again, it's fully customizable, ranging from little small cubby houses to large treehouse networks. This is made of powder-coated steel and bamboo composite slats, so recycled plastic and bamboo composite. So that's another option which we think would create a unique character for Prospect Memorial Garden. And something more conventional is the lap set. They're very good at theming their play equipment as well, and these kind of conventional playground structures range from small structures to quite complex, larger structures. So that's something we could explore as an option as well.
So nothing Australian is what you're telling me. Is that it?
There are Australian companies out there. We've recently specified a company called Will Play. They're out of Queensland. We're Megatoy, and then Megatoy got bought out by a European company, and now that guy's developed an Australian manufactured range of equipment.
What's it called?
Will Play. So
As in W-I-L-L? Will Play.
I think, you know, some of the European companies are just really good at that sort of theming of play, and there's not really, you know, anyone comparable in Australia that does, you know, for example, like the steel art type stuff. So we're not deliberately, you know, not, you know, we do like to use Australian companies where we can and Australian products where we can. I guess it's trying to find an iconic piece of play equipment that we think really fits the reserve and the theme that we're after.
I mean, if you look at the Northern Park, most of their stuff is Kaiser-Kun, which is German, and then you have that big hamster wheel, that's from New Zealand. So a lot of those kind of feature reserves utilize. One idea which we have for Prospect Memorial Gardens might be to incorporate local artists. So building upon that idea of sense of discovery and sculpture park and those types of things, we could engage local artists to produce little sculptures that are hidden in trees or fixed to boulders and that type of thing. So we have the we could engage local artists to give it that fresh feel. So obviously the connection to the community garden is a really good opportunity. Brendan talked about the upgrade shelter, which we feel is an opportunity to develop picnic and barbecue area. And again, I guess that connection with the community garden is an opportunity for them to get their message out, you know, open their doors and, you know, a bit of a demonstration thing, or get into that lineup. So the position of the heritage shelter is really important in terms of its connection with the playground and the community garden. The community garden has a beautiful rusted steel gate, which is an opportunity to incorporate some of that motif throughout the design as well. So these are just some really quick sketches of what that I'm calling it the Community Garden Plaza, but the idea is to have some raised planters, which might be movable. It could be constructed with cortan steel. This might be a demonstration area for the community garden. You guys might hold markets and might want to use this space as an opportunity to sell their produce. So it's really just a plaza space and building a stronger connection with the community garden. What the form of that space looks like is yet to be developed.
And I guess it's something that can grow too. I mean, the community gardens group at the moment may not have the capacity to take on extra garden areas or spaces, but there's the opportunity there to build on that in the future. So hence, perhaps starting with something small that might be like a bit of a demonstration garden or a scented garden, herbs garden or something like that could be managed by council initially, and then that could evolve as the community garden group evolves as well. And I think that connection to the community garden entry gate, the current entry gate, is really important to give that physical and visual connection to the reserve. And then again in the future, there could be an opportunity to provide a new entry and link into the reserve and maybe continue some of the beautiful gate they've already got, that sort of artwork along the back fence, and really open that out to the reserve. and then in terms of the heritage shelter, providing some picnic opportunities and some large picnic tables for parties. We're told from the community that the reserve is used quite often for large gatherings, so there's an opportunity to provide some quite large tables or some smaller groups of tables, heritage shelter, and then that provides that connection with the play space adjacent to it as well, for parents and family.
One change to the shelter. We're proposing to swap that. So we have the junior play area underneath the existing shelter, which is there now, and the senior play can spill out to the open space.
Can you, got my hackles going a little bit, recognising what this building is, can you just really detail what you're suggesting it becomes?
I think that's the refurbishment of the shelters outside of our scope, but
You're suggesting it becomes a junior...
No.
There's a shade cloth thing.
No.
alongside it.
There's a shade cloth which has recently been constructed over the playground. So sorry if I confused you there.
Well, you said heritage.
Heritage shelter.
Yeah.
And then a kind of a canvas shade cloth shelter constructed over the playground.
Right.
So in our original...
That's all right. I misunderstood you then. I thought you meant in the...
He's already been knocked down about 2 weeks ago.
Just to jump in there, that's okay. Just to actually, what's being proposed is in fact that basic picnic tables. I mean, as part of this, it's sort of separate to this redevelopment, but the money that's been put in next year's budget proposed for Alex is looking at refurbishing the heritage shelter, and certainly noted the heritage value of that. You made it very clear last time we spoke about it. But what is proposed is that through the consultations, local residents tend to gather under there for large family gatherings, and so it's actually including larger tables.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's what I just suddenly thought that it was going to become a junior play space.
No.
And it rather goes against my grain for what its historic value is. But no, that's fine. I'm happy with that.
We hope that by putting some tables, the shelter
that's fine. Yeah, great.
used to its potential, I guess, in terms of providing an undercover area for families to gather and sit. And just because of its location with the play space, it's got a great connection for that use.
One thing we're going to have to try and do is find a way to protect the ceiling in there.
Well, Kathy pointed...
By putting large picnic tables in there, I think that might solve your problem of...
well, other than people standing on them,
Well, that's true too.
then become there.
What are you doing instead?
Skating room instead.
Oh, it's just that, you've seen them as they are, and I imagine it's kicking balls, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's what we've been told, yeah. So, I mean, Kathy's suggestion was that there's structures in there that, ball sports would be not quite so conducive. So.
Yeah, look, hopefully, yeah.
It is
Yeah.
an issue, yeah.
So I guess we just have to see when it...
Can I just say that as much as Ashley's enthusiastic about tables, I'm against tables in that space. I think it works really well as a function space that people bump in and bump out of wherever way they want. Often families sit in a big circle under there and they bring their own trestles and put them where they want. The Lions Club, they bump in, they've got all sorts of cooking apparatus in there in different spots. But I like the freedom that the space provides, and tables tend to lock it up a bit, so I need more conviction. And the metal ceiling, I agree, but it just needs a plywood substrate before the metal goes up. We'll fix the problem, so you can kick the whatever out of it, and it will just bounce off. So that's a technical issue, don't worry about that.
Not that technical, David. We all understood it.
But it's not a play space, the ceiling, that's what I'm saying. I'd like to get on here about.
Absolutely, yeah, that's what I'd like to protect, yeah.
Okay,
But as a separate opinion, I think the table should work. So I didn't say I was enthused with it, but I like it.
Parties there, that's all.
The problem is then people have to be organised to bring theirs, where here, no matter what, if it suddenly rains, you can suddenly move and continue what you're doing. Not everybody goes around with trestle tables sticking out the boot.
I mean, it may be that you can provide perhaps one table under there which still, and place it so it still allows for that flexibility to bring your own tables.
Table neutral. No, top.
Subject for further discussion on the later date.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We haven't got fixed tables in the town hall, so...
Can we go to?
I like the idea of the plywood under there. So plywood and then that back on.
Okay, carry on with the presentation.
we're nearly done.
Yeah, we're nearly done.
So we're just summarising the configuration of the playground. As I said, swapping the senior and junior so that junior can cover. We want to connect the spaces with natural play elements so that it feels like a consistent space, and perhaps some of that then you can run between the two spaces as well.
Yeah, one of the things that came out of the current, the more recent consultation was about, the big boulders and rocks and that sort of more natural sort of play, which we'd like to link the two play spaces together. So you might have your iconic piece as your senior play element, and then linking through with, natural play, which could be done reasonably cost effectively, and then you can spend your money on this big iconic piece of equipment.
Fencing is going to be a topic for discussion as well. This is how we propose it might work in our regional concept.
So I think, yeah, with the next phase that we're moving into, we will be, rethinking fencing as part of that, where that could be located.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back a little. I missed it in the excitement about the tables. The junior play area you've got under the shade cloth shelter, is that what you've got in the colours there?
Correct.
Previously it was called senior play in the original design.
Correct.
So
Yes.
what's made you change your thinking in that, what we were thinking is senior play, now you're calling junior play?
I guess it's that it's now undercover, and it's also got if we can put some tables under the heritage shelter, it provides that connection for parents to sit and be able to watch their children under the shade area. So there's close fitting.
Better surveillance.
Yeah, the smaller children.
And the 3 table sets out there already, which I think work really well. The equipment in there is, kids who are really young can use it, but kids who are older use the spinner thing as well. So you're suggesting we'd move that out of there and put more junior stuff in? I'm really confused.
Not necessarily. I mean, we'd keep the items like the slide and the, I think it's called a hurricane in there. That's fine, but perhaps, look at some new equipment to replace. There's a, fairly aged climbing sort of or multi structure, and there's a swing as well. So those items could be replaced with items for junior. Yeah.
So it might be mixed then, because the hurricane suits kids of all ages, it seems. Very popular. And what was the junior play, and now thinking of your senior play, what does that stuff look like? Is that the climbing kind of, taller stuff?
Like tree house, or so some of the images we were sort of showing before.
Sorry, I was complete reversal of what you had before.
Yes.
Developing a barbecue picnic space with connection to the community garden.
So next steps. So I guess just open for sort of questions and comments really. But I mean, I guess in summary, what's being said is that Lyndon and Kathy are proposing some fairly bespoke, natural play themes. And so I'd be interested to get your comments if that's where you want to go down. It's probably going to be a bit more expensive versus more conventional play equipment, which may be more off the shelf, but we might be able to get more bang for our buck sort of thing. So it'd be really important for us to get sort of feedback about what you're thinking. And that's one comment, and the other is just the general layout that's been proposed by Kathy and Lyndon as well, which is the junior play area, the senior play area, the general scope and size of that redevelopment, and the section of the development relating to the community gardens. So.
Well, I'm happy to kick off. But the community gardens bit, I think we should leave to the community garden to evolve into, rather than we haven't enough money to do everything. So I think that it can happily wait another year or two or three, or they may come to us with a great idea that we can consider. The senior play thing as a new thing, that sounds exciting. I was drawn to the treehousey sort of thing because it looks dangerous. That's good. Just as bit, it kind of adds an interesting element to it. But I've got no idea what it costs or how high it is or what happens underneath. The sea of rubber stuff underneath which looks boring, or can we have that richness of landscaping which has added a lot to the current design? Most of it's survived pretty well. So I kind of like to explore something that's a little more risky and perhaps leave the existing equipment there for another few years because it's not completely dead. And keep working on that themed park idea and hook it all together. I think that the paths are there now work really well too.
So the theme idea for you is a strong point of it though?
I like the way it has a theme. Some things have worked really well and some haven't, but I'm not a parent of a small child anymore, so I'm probably more prepared to listen to the feedback we got from the community about what the kids liked. But that sort of stuff looks interesting. As long as it's not too insipid, like you could take an exciting idea like that and run it through some council playground standards, and it ends up being 4 foot above the ground, and that's the end of that idea.
So you wouldn't have landscaping underneath it, for instance, in this photo. But you would have an area of softball around, mulch softball, and because of those existing trees, mature trees in the reserve, you'd have to be really considerate of the size of the piece of the equipment that we're putting in to ensure not to,
damage the tree roots and that like that we can.
Yeah, the protection zone of the trees. We wouldn't want to encroach on the protection zones of the trees. So,
Yeah.
Yes, just the landscape architect for council, and
Sorry, Ken. Sorry. Yes, Sam.
yeah, and so part of the brief that was given out of space was that we want them to do a master plan for the whole area, including the entry, is to have not necessarily roles to be built next year, but to have a future plan over the next 5 years. So that it's all coordinated and it's not bitsy, like all the things that have been considered added later on. $100,000 is going to build this whole playground. What we want is a future plan that we can build on, and we can select a few items from that, whether it be spent and then one piece of equipment to build in the next year. But it's all leading towards this bigger plan, and we just don't want to try and think, okay, what can we do for $100,000, choose a couple of basic things, and then try and add them later on. Let's look to the 5-year big plan, and from the budget we have now, to shoot key items.
Finished? I'm just curious as to, when you say senior playground, what age group are you gearing at?
7 to 12, that type of age.
Okay, so why would you need a fence around it?
That's what we're, sometimes you don't, so we will be looking at the fencing as part of developing the final concept plan, because initially we had the junior play sort of our from the reserve a bit, and so the fencing came the whole way around, whereas we're actually sort of starting to think, hey, maybe we can fence it or secure the sort of junior play area, but you could in fact potentially open up where the senior play space is, for example, so that it opens up to outing to the reserve.
So I wouldn't be excited about spending money on a fence on that area. I'd rather pour it into what goes into the area that goes back there. Can we just go back to the top 10 list?
Yeah, sure.
Lots of stuff there is not about buying great big pieces of equipment, and my concern is that we are going to end up spending a lot of our budget on that, and if we're going to do that, we want it big, we want it dangerous, we want it, well, not dangerous, but there needs to be a large element of risk. And kids, as they get older, they want to be up and away and appear to be invisible from adults. So something really, like at Benoithen Park, they've got that great big circular crisscross thing with all the nets going on. I think if you're going to spend money, you want to spend it well, and you want to spend it on something like that where they feel invisible, but they're actually not, they're highly visible. All those things talk about mounds, hills, free play stage areas rather than, something like some of the things that you were showing us where kids can make up their own stuff and not confined to what's been offered. Mud play, modules where they can pick things up, move them around, open up things. So if you're going to do anything, there's got to be, they still need to be seen obviously, but they need to be able to open doors, close doors, build and open out things. Walls to walk on, balance and that sort of stuff. I mean, for me, I'd much rather see our money be spent at this stage on that sort of stuff, great big rocks that they can climb and challenge themselves on. Okay. And maybe we really think about the iconic piece of equipment and not focus on that just yet, but so that we can pour some decent money into it and have it something really fabulous and not stop at 12, 13, 14-year-olds. You also want to make sure you've got stuff that doesn't encourage graffiti, kids hiding away, smoking, drinking and stuff like that. And I just feel that some of the stuff that was shown there, too hidey stuff where kids can get up and do inappropriate stuff. I mean, they'll do that. They'll do it anywhere, but let's not have them do it in our kids' playgrounds. Let's do it out in the open wall. So that's where I'd rather see our money on. Let's just hold off on the big iconic piece of equipment and get all this other stuff in place.
The landscaping.
Yeah, and the landscaping involves the play as well.
Yeah. So boulders and natural play
elements. Natural play element. Yeah.
But let's not spend money on a fence. And I know some of you are going to go, well, kids will run out on the road and get run over. But by the age of the senior playground, they should have some sort of road sense. And if the stuff's good enough, they'll just stay in that environment anyway.
Just really quickly on the fence, it's just every community consultation, people always raise they want a fence. And it's, I mean, a lot of councils have, no longer do a fence. I know the master plan for that precinct talked about pedestrianising Menzies Crescent to slow traffic down, but...
I mean, there's already a fence in the junior playground, and if people really feel their kids are at risk, stick them in the junior playground.
You suggested that too, wasn't it, to keep the existing fence and outside of that?
Possibly, yeah.
So you have an option. So you've got a fenced area and you've got a free play area. And if parents really think their 10-year-olds at massive risk, stick them in where they're treating them, basically.
Just to cover on David when he raised the, I would have called it the chubby house, the tree house sort of stuff. I think that's good. The only problem that come in there is with the existing trees we've got, all right, looking after their roots and their leaves and that, you get a bit close to them, you might put your tin lid in the play area, where the hell's he gone? Next minute he's up the branches of the other tree. That's so close. So just, how it fits in, and I think it's good. I personally a little bit concerned when we went into the bigger area of the art path there. I'd hate to see that go. When I say go, I don't mean it maybe shifted or something like that. But I still think it should exist. It should
that's our boundary, I guess. Yeah.
Where that is. Yeah, so definitely what Sister said there, using the rocks and stuff like that, it's a good, I think it's good to sort of hide around, play around and be in that more natural environment because they're in the city. But I like the tree house or playhouse in the tree, something exciting like that with a bit of danger for kids, even though maybe it's not real danger, but they can think they're dangerous. So I'm fine with that. The fence, I was over there with you with those kids sticking the stuff up.
Well, that's right, yeah.
Nearly every parent said, oh, as long as they don't go out the road, as long as they don't, you know, there was a real, and I'm not really good on fences, you know, I spent my life climbing over them to get away, but, you know, I don't like any sort of fence in my life, but, you know, it's there in parents' heads of that, so I think we should be mindful of that. But I like you, Lonnie, you know, once a kid's 8, 9, or 10, he's going to run out under a truck.
Natural
Give him a helmet, you know, so we get the selection for it. So, long to past day, you said that. That tree sort of set up, I'm real keen, something big like that, as opposed to, say, the helicopter type stuff and that, but also a lot more natural stuff. Kids like we had in Peppermint, with one of our local parks that was done. We put the hill in there and the roots and the trees and my stories. And I can make stories on this new one because
I'm just curious, why you moving that?
Hang on, we can't take questions from the gallery, sorry. It's part of the rules of the workshop. Ashley?
not a topic I've given a huge amount of thought to in my life, but I've had to get more interested in over the last year because of this. And from looking at a number of parks since and going online, I'm not so convinced that we should spend a great chunk of money on something really iconic. But I think lots of smaller challenges, lots of different interests, because you're working with lots of different children. And you go up on one of those great big fantastic slides and you slide down it. All right, done that. As against things that challenge you in many different ways depending on the angle you approach it or how you view it. So I'd probably go that way myself, rather than, I mean, it looks fantastic and it might get a lot of applause because this is something great thing in the middle, but as against educating and challenging children, you can do that. I think you can do vastly more of that with the same amount of money. I think you could build an Empire State Building. So it would be my temptation, but I'm more a listener on this topic than a player. So.
Okay, more from Deb?
I'm going to say, just to counter some views, I think a bit of iconic stuff is really important. The thing that gets played on the most in the program we have at the moment is the Hurricane. Absolutely, far and away, is the most popular piece of equipment we've ever had in the history of the city, I dare say. I've seen 20 children on that one piece of equipment. And it's amazing. Now, that park is becoming known for that Hurricane, and kids who are playing in ones and twos still use it, but they'll use everything else. When there's lots of kids, they absolutely just go for the Hurricane. So you need both. You need stuff that's really popular and makes kids want to go to the park, and you need all the other stuff that makes it a complete adventure that they can be challenged by and balance on, or make stories up about and all that sort of stuff. But I'm really interested in this idea of the senior play area as something that is a bit challenging and surrounded by or embedded in another challenging environment. I think that's kind of really good. And I think the fence is an interesting discussion point for us. I look forward to your design coming back. And it might be, as Monica says, you keep the fence maybe exactly where it is, but perhaps roughly where it is, and parents decide. Now that might mean that the senior stuff can be a little bit more adventurous because the parents are going to keep their little kids in the fence zone and they won't be able to access the bigger stuff easily unless the parents deliberately decide to let them to access it. And that might be good. It might be good. But I agree with Brendan. We get so much feedback about our playgrounds needing fences. So we've got to be cognizant of that. Although generally, I think that's for kids who are under 7 that parents are worried about. but we don't differentiate our playgrounds. They're a one-size-fits-all model at the moment. This will be the first one where we kind of have different age.
But you could have the stuff that you build as the boundary. So yeah, so instead of spending money on a fence, spend money on stuff that kids really want to use and make that the boundary. Spikes, you know.
Okay.
You can use natural barriers as well, the planting, you know, things like that.
One option for the fence might be to continue the fence along Menzies Crescent past the gate, and then perhaps fence off the car park area behind the toilet, and then you have a visual sense of enclosure. When the kid has to run 40 metres before he's outside that terrain. So it's a visual cue. So there's a lot of open space, so the kids can't run that far without...
It's possible. I think we'd have to test that through community consultation. We have some parks that are open-ended now like that, and we just get requests to fence the open end. You know, so I would agree with you, but I don't have a 3-year-old. Okay, so.
Or make the fence something so like it's not cable but or rope or something like that where kids can utilise it, climb it, swing on it, etc., etc.
And running that fence up there, you've got a memorial there that you can't fence off.
No, that's right. There's an opening.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
That's something you can't fence off.
No, I'll take Dynabox as concrete.
We need to wind this discussion up. Anything else anyone wants to say before we finish?
What are the... Sorry, what is the process?
I was going to explain that unless you wanted to.
Yeah, well, essentially, Kathy and Lyndon are happy to come back to another workshop with further design work, if that's what you would like. But we're heading towards essentially a preferred draft design to go to council meeting for approval for community consultation. So again, if you want to, from tonight's meeting, Lyndon and Kathy hopefully got enough information from tonight's meeting. We'll go off and do some more thinking, some more drawing, and come back to a further workshop. If that's
with some costing, because you can't go anywhere without costing.
Yeah. And could I suggest that there's a working group put together? I hate to think the wonderful design work comes back and it's a workshop by me, who doesn't have small children anymore. So I'd rather it came, endorsed by designers, staff, and a group of people who are really interested. There's some here tonight, maybe there are others, and a couple of elected members who are interested.
Yeah.
So that when it comes to the workshop, we know there's been a really good group of people road tested, and we feel less inclined to interfere, I think, if that's the case.
Fantastic, yeah. So I mean, so Ashley would be on that working group, I'd imagine.
No.
Yeah, I think it might be great to have
Maybe Mark Root as well.
Mark Root, yeah. Got some tea leaves.
Maybe one or two members of the public as well.
I'm ex officio anyway, so yeah.
And you with that costing, you're really going to have to break it down so that as people build their different models, you can then build the costing around it.
That's right.
It's pointless ending up with something that's we're not really sure of the costs. So you're going to have to modularise that costing.
Yep, sure. Okay. So Alan, are you interested in that? Did you say yes to that, or?
Well, Dave threw out that he's got no tin lids anymore. Mine is as old as his.
He's 21.
6 or 7, I'm sorry anyway. I'm interested first.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for your comments and apologies, Jessica, not introducing you earlier, so I'm sure we'll get in trouble for that.
Okay, so just to summarise, we have Alan, Mark Root, Monica,
yeah.
And we might get a couple of members from the public involved as well that's got kids.
Yep.
This will be great. And pull that group together to assist in getting the next concept all together enough for council.
Let's do something time-consuming suggestion is get kids from years 5 to 7 at all the primary schools in the local area. I mean, most of those kids are local kids. And maybe put forward some suggestions on, I mean, you don't need to do that now at this stage, but talk to them about what is something great and fantastic and show them lots of pictures of lots of different things about the things that that age group would like.
Yeah. We actually did that part of the consultation, got an enormous amount of feedback, so...
And all the carousel, did they?
No.
Sorry, just to distract you from that comment. Can we make sure we've got one or two people from the community garden, because there's talk about them being involved in it. And you might want to think, Brendan, about who's already organised in the community we should have as part of that, whether it's, I don't know, maybe one of the kindergarten communities. There are three. We're going to need all three. Who would feel kind of knows how to do it if we didn't ask them, is what I'm thinking of. So Mark can be the prospect for our Kinder Gym connection, because he's involved in that.
Okay.
But there might be another group that...
Sure, we can do that, yeah.
So we'll get that group together to help form these new plans, working with you guys. Come back to the next workshop. A bit more clarity, a bit more costing, a bit more information, and then we can have an informed discussion about where to from there.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Okay, with that we need to finish off, so can you join with me in thanking Lyndon? Okay. We need to plug things in.
I think we're ready to go. Elizabeth, yeah, thanks, Kathy. To discuss the other spectrum of age groups now, HAC funding.
When I applied about going to that thing in
Yeah.
the reason I sort of said we, I never know when you send an email, it goes about 8 for one person.
Oh.
Where I was
Please, just for you?
Yeah.
Okay. I shall book you in.
I'll just wait for Monica to get back if we can.
Oh, about 2010.
So how long's this segment?
Segment is 20 minutes.
Well, I had a lull. I sort of went out.
That's all right.
But I was back in 2010.
Sister Kerry. That's the only best bloke's name, were you?
Okay. Okay, we'll get on with the next item, which is HAC funding. Brendan, can you just introduce Elizabeth for us, so explain what she does with the council?
Yep, if I can just introduce Elizabeth Giola. Elizabeth's council's team leader, home and community care. And Elizabeth's come along tonight to tell you about some changes that have actually occurred to HAC funding, and its likely impact upon council's delivery of services in from 2015 onwards. So a bit of an update, a bit of an overview. So over to Elizabeth.
I'll just start with a quick overview.
Yep. Oh, quick for you. Yep, I can do that.
So I guess level 1 down to the older. So home and community care, as we call it, HAC, commenced in 1985, and that was to provide basic support to eligible persons with the idea of keeping them at home and delaying admission to residential care for as long as possible. The program here at Prospect now has 2 key elements. That's the home assist, where we provide services such as cleaning, gardening, gutter tidying, minor home maintenance, modification, and our social programs, which provide a range of activities to help people get out in the community, be active, have lunch together, go on trips, which is the elements at the moment. We've been receiving HAC funding, and we also have been looking after Walkerville residents since 1993. We have a shared agreement with them, which we review every time we get funding from the government. And services and programs have grown significantly in response to consumer demand and vary across the council. And I brought...
Now, that's 1, 2, 3. I was a bit confused by that. 1993 was when Walkerville came on board, or when...
When Walkerville, we had meetings that they decided to share services. We've been looking after Walkerville since 1993. And our first lot of funding was basically about $30,000. It started small and it's grown over the years. And I've got some information booklets, you probably will have seen them, but for those that haven't, the couple there which provide all the information about what we do. Okay, so an update of what's happening at the moment. The aged care reform process commenced in 2010 as part of the Productivity Commission Living Longer, Living Better. And from 2012, the Commonwealth took over funding for the over 65. And that was meant to be an end-to-end aged care system. When you turn 65, previous state funded it. From 2012, the Commonwealth took over 65, so PAC, and then going on to packages, and then residential care, and then nursing home.
That was when we got that reduction in funding, wasn't it?
We have still been getting some amount of funding, but it's proposed to change July next year. So from...
So we
did get a reduction 2 years ago, didn't we? Quite a slight.
No, we did not. It just moved from state government funding to largely Commonwealth. So there was not a reduction.
Yeah. They were going to, and then they realised that they weren't quite ready. They still needed.
Ah, okay.
So that wasn't the money we had to give back.
No.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, that was that was different funding. But I remember Deb briefing us on the effect it would have. I just didn't realise it hadn't gone ahead.
No.
Okay.
So for this coming financial year, we still get the same amount of money.
Yeah. Correct.
So whatever happens, City of Prospect will still remain the service provider. We've been guaranteed that, and any clients that we currently provide a service for will keep those services. It's what changes from July next year. And it becomes the Commonwealth Home Support Program, so we can't say heck anymore, and we still can't get words right. It just doesn't flow freely. So funding for 14-15 from the Commonwealth is 614,000, but that doesn't include the 2.4% CPI, which we were talking about last week. And on top of that, we will get state funding of around $60,000.
Significant program.
Yeah, so we're looking at $690,000 from the state Commonwealth.
I assume it's still all contract staff and everything, because we just don't know how long the funding will go. Is it?
We only get jobs subject to funding. Anybody in HAC, their positions are subject to funding, because if HAC came to an end, I wouldn't be needed, basically.
How long are the agreements?
The current one finishes July or June 30th next year. And I brought...
So beyond that, we don't have an agreement yet?
We don't have an agreement yet. So
it seems pretty ordinary for something that's been going since 1985 to still be on a contract basis.
And they've discussed whether giving 5-year contracts. They're still saying no, it'll be a 3-year contract, 2015 to 2018. What will be funded for is still not completely finalised.
Of the 690,000, 60, a bit less than that. Any idea how much of that is in wages, salaries, or whatever? Well, let me know what you can spend on the assist side.
Could we take the question and answer?
Yeah.
Tomorrow we'll
Sorry,
ask you.
I should have brought the budget with me.
There's a team, isn't there, of people? Right.
3 full-time staff and 4
and that's all funded out of that? Right, okay. I can work that out, yeah. 24... Yeah.
We'll email that out during the week, just so you know.
So the outcomes, at the moment, we're funded for different service types. They're all being reviewed. And the service type assessments and client care coordination is the one that will be affected at the local level. That's the one that they're talking about taking away from us. At the moment, a resident, 9 times out of 10, the resident will ring us direct or come into customer service or get a family member to ring. From July 2015, they'll be required to go through the My Aged Care Gateway website. So there's one central information point where somebody's ringing up and telling their story once, not somebody mainly ringing up us, getting information from us, and then they go to another. It'll all be on one platform. Big Brother will be watching it. Everything will just be documented once. and then they'll tell their story there.
So if I could just sit at that point for a little bit longer, so the aspect of the home and community care program that has been questioned by funding is the assessment and client care coordination, which essentially is that personal relationship component of that program. Because Home Assist is essentially about Elizabeth and her team working with contractors to go out to cleaning, home maintenance. And so the assessment, client care coordination will be done through a website and through a centralised, as yet unknown regional capacity. That's what will be lost. And the only day-to-day sort of contact that would remain, if that change happens, is through our social programs.
So if somebody wants something clean, they've got to go through that process now.
Correct. Yeah, through a centralised process of which has not been decided or described yet. So
see, that turns into another Centrelink type bloody operating system. It'll just be crap for old folk.
So essentially, I mean, the context that Elizabeth's actually made is that, you know, an elderly resident who's actually quite isolated, you know, can be quite distraught. Elizabeth physically goes to his or her home and will view what's going on, have a cup of tea and a bit of cake and acting very professionally will, but you know, there's a relationship. We won't have that.
We're required to ring a call centre in Box Hill. And
that's just not.
How do they know that they ring a call centre, and how do they know that they have to do that?
Well, it'll be advertised, it'll be promoted more in the coming 12 months. There'll probably be a publicity blade for aged care services. Anyone coming to the customer service will have to say to them, I'm sorry, you need to register with my aged care website before you get a support.
I just can't understand the benefit. I can understand if old folk moved every 7 months, so they'd be in different councils, but they're likely to be forever in the same spot. It doesn't.
They're essentially, from what we can understand, again, it's not really well described the reasons, but what we can understand, there are two reasons. One is the separating assessment from service delivery, because at the moment they're both together, and so the notion is that we can over-service a client because there's no separation. And the second reason is that through a centralised process, everything is standardised. So the assessment is through occupational therapists, and you know, it's a very detailed, standardised system. So their argument is that the care will be
nationally consistent data.
Nationally consistent.
Right, that's a big push. Everything we do.
And so move from low level, if their needs increase, it's all documented on the gateway. So it'll tell the story of 65 basically to death, what happened to that person.
Presumably they're doing that to save administration. Is that an impact on the team we've got in the site?
We have to.
Absolutely.
And I suspect it'll be, when we get a new funding agreement, it'll be a condition of the funding agreement that we direct everybody to the aged care website. They'll ring that number. There will be this hearing impaired contingencies for people with English as a second language. Still nothing for people with dementia. That's still to be worked out. So then you'll ring this number, and then they will then decide what level of service you get, and you need assessment, which will then go to the assessment grid, to the regional assessment team.
Elizabeth, I'm assuming they let people ring on someone's behalf. Like
you can ring on someone's behalf, yes.
So if it is a dementia issue, then surely that client wouldn't be expected to.
And the questions, which I've not seen yet, are quite detailed. Medicare number, pension number, which is something we don't do at the moment. So they want to bring a national assessment tool so that someone in Prospect gets asked the same questions as someone in Haran or Brisbane or wherever. And in-home assessments, which are currently conducted by myself, so Home Assist and by our social program coordinator, will be done by regional assessment team, and that region is yet to be determined. It could just be the era councils, but somebody suggested that it might be where health is at the moment, so our Medicare local region, which currently being funded, but that takes in Adelaide Hills and some other councils. So quite a big region where they've set up what facilities they'd be given. I go out to do assessments. I use the council. All the resources put into whatever the region will be. So era ageing has been talking about.
Did I put it on mine?
So era ageing, the era ageing group, we meet every other month at the moment. We recognise the value of the local assessment process and are carrying ongoing local support to the client, which we don't want to lose. We may never get to see the client apart from the social program. We might just get the assessment, we might get the referral, Mrs. Smith needs cleaning, and she's got a 2-story house, a bit of information, and send it on to the cleaning company. So now at least I get to visit the client at least once, and train and promote all the other services that we provide and refer and advocate on the behalf if they need any information. So that will get lost. So the EAR Ageing Group are going to lobby to become the regional assessors for the region as part of the My Aged Care national paper released 2 weeks ago, and it does say that we can apply to be the regional assessor. So we're going to go ahead and will be seen in a positive light. So this discussion paper talks a lot about all the new service types, etc. They want to be in the national feed policy. We've got till the end of June to respond.
What does that mean, a national feed policy?
Again, anybody feeding a service in Prospect will pay the same as someone receiving a service in
in the DD.
Anyway.
Anyway.
And just quickly on that point, so I mean, Elizabeth was quite successful getting a good contract for our home assist services. That is, we get good bang from our buck. The contract we're cheaper than other councils in your region, and it's really because of the that contract that we've managed to arrange.
And do clients currently pay? I'm pretty ignorant of. I know what the program is, but do clients pay for any of their services?
At the moment it's $8 an hour for cleaning, gardening, minor home maintenance. It's roughly 25% of what the contractors charge us, and it's been that basically since I've been here. And WA is the only state that has a standard fees policy at the moment, which I looked at last week, and it's interesting to note that their client contribution is $8 as well. So we're sort of on par with them. Another council in the east got into a lot of publicity at the beginning of the year because they put up their contribution to $15.
Just to clarify something, the Eastern Region Alliance Ageing Group have been working for the last couple of years on this looming change, and so there's a fair bit of work been undertaken by all of the 7 councils in the area. So it's a good group that started to really investigate and come up with what they're looking at, recommendations for lobbying. So that's generally what this presentation is about, council being aware of that work that ERA is doing and really trying to get you to support this initiative to lobby as it suggests out there. So just to clarify, that's exactly what we did.
I guess the reason is that I guess we seek your support for the ERA Ageing Group, and there's also been discussions with the LGMA to lobby the Commonwealth Government to ensure that the benefits gained from locally based assessments and high care coordination included within the Commonwealth.
Very happy to support it. I'm acutely aware it's their money though, so we are kind of tied with what they think is appropriate. However, if we don't think their view of the world is appropriate, why aren't we as a council advocating for a reversal of the direction they're heading in? Not saying I'm happy to support that, but why wouldn't we also say, this is a really important contact for people who are old and often, quite isolated in our community. And we think that the personal contact is really important. Why wouldn't we be saying that as well?
Initially, when what program was being discussed, at one stage they didn't even deemed necessary that there wants to be a face-to-face assessment. They thought people would just ring up the My Aged Care website and there is a service provider. So we lobbied last year for face-to-face assessment and the importance of that, because you can't see how the person's living. They could live in a mansion on extreme swallow.
I think, David, you're right. I mean, we need to really consider this as a council and as a region. And perhaps we could report to council, suggesting that the council itself makes this sort of lobbying agreement and also follow it through at the regional level.
And we also spoke at the last meeting about maybe getting the LGA to come on board as a group. Just one region speaking.
Pick up those three things, Mark. One, to support the request for support. Secondly, for council to write its own letter that what it thinks, and you'll have to put some words to that, so when we approve it, we know what we're approving. And thirdly, that this council lobbies the LGA to investigate whether there's a joint response from the councils to go up.
Do you mean, though, to overturn the My Care or whatever it is?
Well, I think
program?
I mean, it's their money, so if they want to coordinate out of Box Hill or wherever, fine. But I think the bit that's missing is, and I totally agree with the team here, when Mrs. So-and-so rings up, it's often because something's gone wrong. You know, it's not like, oh, look, I don't access to service, that's terrific. It's like a friend of theirs has said, look, you really need some help, right? Call Elizabeth, she's fantastic. She'll come out and see you. And Elizabeth goes out there and thinks, oh my goodness, there's so many things need to be sorted out here, where do we start? So it's a matter of having interaction that turns into a process of assistance. It's not a phone call to some call centre.
I don't disagree. However, I guess the point I was making, it's pointless council or ERA or the local government association doing anything unless they get every single LGA. It's Australia-wide. They're not going to change anything for Prospect or ERA or South Australia.
No, but actually, I mean, it's a domino effect.
Well, no, but you haven't got time to hang around. This comes into play when?
July next year.
Right, you haven't got
Next
time.
year, which is
12 months. 13 months.
What, and to get the all of local government together around Australia? Hey,
how much time do you want? 5 years.
Say 5 years, doesn't it? So, but it's not it's worthless almost coming from a council or a group.
No,
it's important to come from states in total.
Not very often I disagree with you. But as we're going into the tunnel, we don't start squealing, we'll come out the other side. I think it's important, every little voice that says if something's right, if it's not. You know, I've got a mother, and I've got people have too, but I've got a mother in another council, and it's a big thing. The hack people coming down and they're $5 and getting a tree trim, and then
Totally agree.
another contractor comes in and wants $400 for what they get for $8. And they like the community. My mother doesn't have a computer, doesn't know that. And when she rings someone that's important, it's usually me, then I've got to ring them. So these sort of things are very important to pass on. And if you fill out a line in a computer, or even ring up, and as good as whatever's at the other end, as good as it is, doesn't replace these young ladies' eyes when they go into someone's house and
Totally agree with you.
oh, she's asked me to wash the dishes. Why hasn't she washed? Because there's no pipe connected. Oh, I know the plumber. So that visual contact, and if we sit back and wait for everyone, it might happen, but I think every time the opportunity comes...
Well, I don't disagree, but the point I'm making, if only parts of South Australia complain, it ain't going nowhere. You've really got to get big voices.
Someone has to start complaining before everyone else comes on board.
Sure, time is the enemy.
We've started revolutions before out of Prospect. We can do it again.
Yeah, which are they?
We need to wind up. Have you got anything more?
That's it. Good well. I'll provide more information.
So session report to council, but
Okay, so just to summarise where we're up to, the intent will be to report to council at our earliest opportunity, probably this month, and get council endorsement, and we'll take it further from there. That's the first presentation to council, and I think.
Well, Elizabeth, well done. Just fire up, Elizabeth.
And that's the nice part of my job too.
I know. It's very important.
Okay, thanks for that. We'll move on to the next item. We're racing through them tonight. I just need to say we have an item that Carolyn wants to talk to us after the workshop's completed tonight, so we need an extra 5 or 10 minutes. Next item is the ERA action plan, and Jen's here tonight to help us work through this, and Chris will also. So maybe I'll hand over to you, Chris, just to introduce us.
So Jen's here tonight, Jennifer Buchan. If you haven't met her before, but most of you should have.
Does everyone know Jen? You've all met before? Yeah, I'm sure you have.
Economic Development Officer. She's been holding the reins while we're waiting for soon to begin the recruitment process for a replacement director. So she's been involved with the Eastern Region Alliance and the Business and Economic Development Group in receiving and interrogating an earlier report from Professor Dick Blandy about the ERA's position, its gross regional product, and where it's positioned in relation to other councils. And I've been reading through that report, which I understand that elected members have received that previously. Prospect and ERA certainly sit in a favourable position to take advantage of what the future holds, with a third of our the property and business services, finance and insurance sectors within our region, representing about 1/3 of the overall economy, and probably 2/3 of our workers and residents holding a tertiary qualification. So we're on that. We're highly educated, highly skilled, and the ERA action plan picks up on some of the recommendations of Professor Blandy's report to spell out a possible future in terms of a collaborative effort to realise the potential that this region offers. So I'll hand over to Jen to talk us through the ERA action plan.
Just before you do, for the benefit of Ashley and Alan, I think, Monica and David attended the Professor Blandy presentation, which was provided to the Eastern Region Group, so they have a bit more first-hand knowledge, I guess, of the...
That's pretty much my presentation.
I don't know that I was there.
But you, I did read it, though.
There's if anyone needs a copy.
I'll distribute it by email.
Yeah, I don't want to go through
No,
all
that's
the
fine.
ones, but basically the action plan that I sent through did come out that analysis that was provided. So nothing sits outside of that initial report that was endorsed by Council back in February. And these are generally there's a broad emphasis in this report on quality of life and value for companies, individuals and industries, and following discussions with the ERA Council staff, 4 broad economic development themes have been recommended.
Wasn't it events, recreation and tourism?
Yeah, tourism events, yeah, that actually comes in.
Yeah.
That has been redefined in the action plan.
In the action plan, yeah.
So small business generally, creative industry, sports events, recreation and tourism. So that's sports and events, not just sports events. Recreation, tourism and water. So the draft ERA action plan has actually gone past the CEOs in a rawer form, and it was sent back to the ERA group to tailor it back a little bit more, and it's now, it was endorsed now in its current form in May, and it is set over 4 financial years, and funding be requested from ERA to be allocated over each of those 4 years. So if you have a look at the action plan itself, does anyone need a copy? There's a lead council overall of 30 million.
Yeah, how did you manage that? We didn't get to be lead counsel on any of the major headings. How did you work that? Even Walkerville got a gig. How did that work out?
They asked for that.
You went to the loo every time they topic.
Blink first, you get it.
So the funding that you've talked about is external or staff time, so it's in kind. So year one is dedicated to the creative industry and creating a strategy to grow that sector. ERA has already engaged someone to start that off, Brian Hale. We already had budget that was available to our portfolio group this financial year with the endorsement of the CEO. And his work is an extension of Smart Aid to transform this project work that Terry Bell's been working on for ERA. So that, I'll see if I didn't have a chance to put that spreadsheet in there. Brian did come and talk to us about who our key people were in the creative industry. Just an example, that graphic designers, interior designers, photographers, filmmakers, even libraries and hubs comes under that heading as well. And there's quite an extensive list, about 25 different professional names that come under that. And we've supplied him with a list of our key players, those that would have some comment about creative industries and be able to assist in creating a strategy.
Is the funding by head of population or by commercial income or what? The split?
Well, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, because you'd have to think by head of population, which is by how we normally do it, might not be the best model. Somebody with, like, say, North Plains and Peters, with a massive commercial income, just off the parade, then you'd have to think a lot of the benefits might flow to them at a greater rate than they'd flow to Walkerville or Prospect.
We have the MBN coming very shortly, which will be super beneficial for creative industry.
It better be.
Gone through it.
Sure. But I was just wondering what the model was. It's
I don't think it's been finalised, so I think that's something to
yeah. We might just try and work out what model best suits us and argue it on the day.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I'll try to summarise this as best I can, but it's kind of hard to summarise what a year is going to entail. So on the draft action plan, green refers to those priority projects that are happening 2013-2014. So in green, those are the ones that are currently being implemented based on that previous funding. In blue, we have year two, that's the events, tourism, lifestyle. In summary, it includes a variety of projects, including mapping home-based businesses and unveiling growth opportunities for them, planning job creation and supporting digital enterprise with ERA as a whole, working with the SA Exporters Association, working with Eastside Business Enterprise Centre, creating a tourism strategy, and possibly branding ERA as a region to include attractions and accommodation options as a whole, not just relying on Prospect. In orange and red, year 3 and 4, I'm not fully across everything that's in there at the moment. I've only really been going to the last couple of ERA groups myself, just as a proxy for Justin, and just picking up what I can in the last couple of months. But that will include encouraging advanced manufacturing, support home-based business and start-up business by offering access to hubs, etc., and technology we have to provide. Advocate state and federal governments to implement small business tax cuts and reduce red tape. Adopt renew Adelaide approaches to temporarily fill vacant premises. David, you'll that. Keep vacancy rates low, explore stamp duty reform. Now this is one that was picked up by other councils as something that they didn't necessarily want to endorse. That's been taken out as a provision. I've had about 3 out of the 7 councils already provide the action plan to their councils and have them endorse that item. And I might need to run that past you again because I'm not fully across what that means as well.
Which one was it?
It's 2.16.
Yeah, trying to get stamp duty on.
Oh, right, yeah.
The intent was for council to fund the stamp duty, wasn't it, or something, to encourage
Increased rate.
property changeovers and intensify.
In your dreams, you know how big our stamp duty is?
It's more, I think it's a macroeconomic reform that we can't control. So
It is, yeah, it was, that's how it was mentioned, just as a big picture thing.
So we wouldn't agree with these.
In our dreams, when the GST is still sitting at 10%.
yeah.
Okay, in addition, they'll be revisiting the ERA charter to facilitate the maturing of ERA and be able to provide feedback for CEOs, so support feeder for CEOs. And also provide seed funding to kickstart initiatives resulting from strategies and the BECs. Further down the track, there's what's called the Oath is Gold concept, which is a preventative health precinct pilot program. Again, I'm not fully across what that actually means. I have a bit more research to do, but I can fill you in that later. Also, implementing outcomes from the ERA tourism strategy, not that. You know that Fishery Gully currently has a tourism strategy. ERA might look at to pull things out of, use that as a template. Also includes investigating reskilling for manufacturing workers, i.e. Holden workers, how to feed them back into the workforce. Further down the track, understanding education mix in the East and assist organisations to support business and skill development in the region. Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to try and attempt to answer them.
Just give us a funding update, Jennifer. Where are we at in terms of what's in our budget and how does this flow? Is this a question about us funding something at a higher level, or is it a question of us saying we're okay with the schedule as it's presented to us?
Well, as far as I can work out, it looks like it's all external funding. I believe there's something in our strategic economic plan that you're collaborating with ERA, but that's not actually broken down into what portion. I know that the Eastside Business Enterprise Centre takes $7,500, but that was a separate budget bid, and that originally Steve wanted to see that increase by $500 per year for the next 3 years. So I know that that's one expense that sits under here from council, but I can't see anything else. Mark, you might have.
Well, the funding for this year comes out of the current funds that the Eastern Region has within its membership. So there's no extra call on councils at this stage. Whether that's going to be the case in future years is something we've got to
see. Right, okay.
My commitment is $20,000 per year from each council,
Oh, okay. Which provides a pool which may back fund this.
That's right, that's what's funding this year,
Yeah.
and it may fund future years as well. It depends how we travel.
Yeah. So if the funding's not an issue, then tonight we're just getting information, or is this a chance for us to say something should happen faster or slower? Or what are you after from us?
Really an endorsement of the action plan so they can move ahead and start implementing. But there are a couple of things. I understand you may not be able to endorse everything right now. You might just like to endorse several of those dot points as a chunk and come back later, particularly because I'm not across every single thing.
Pretty much the majority of councils so far have endorsed it, except for the stamp duty issue.
That's right.
So just endorsed it on block as a work in progress.
Yeah, it all looks worthwhile to me. It's the sort of stuff that we want to investigate. I've only got a couple of comments, and they're general, they're not specific. The stamp duty one, just trying to find it in here. Was it 2.1?
2.1.
I'm still in this thing here. 2.16. It doesn't cost any money, so it's only staff time to hear of financial managers. So I'm not. I mean, I don't see a need for us to pursue it. But equally, it's a question of how much time would the finance managers spend on it. Is it 5 minutes or is it 5 months? I've got no idea. But I'm not going to die in a ditch over it. If people want to take it out, I'd be happy with that. The second is, Mark, probably more a question for for you, in terms of the amount of effort that goes in and whether we get bang for bucks out of it, how do we measure that this is the right effort and we're actually getting results out of this effort? How are we, or how's ERA doing that?
Yes, I mean, this is one of the few areas there's been significant focus, and it's really at the early stages. So all we've had so far is the CEOs have endorsed the work. The ERA Environment Group have initiated their own investigations and come up with this action plan. We haven't yet had the endorsement of all councils, so the work hasn't really commenced yet. So this is really just an outline of what is intended. What we've got to do once we get the council's endorsement is for them to sit down with the Environment Group and really work out the KPIs to deliver this stuff. So that's work yet to be done. I think that'll be done this financial year, coming financial year.
KPIs.
More KPIs.
I probably would just like there to be a rider that says that at the end of every year there's a fairly objective assessment about not just progress against these targets, but whether it's been worthwhile. So we're not just writing reports, but it does have an impact on our local economies. That's ultimately the goal. So are there more people employed? Is there higher productivity and output? Is there economic wealth being generated? Whatever objective measures there are, has it been worth the effort? It looks like there's a 4-year program here, is that right, gentlemen? 4? So that would happen every 12 months, I think, would be healthy, unless the CEOs see a better interval.
I'll pursue that.
I would suspect, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, that it would be dependent on funding that each of these may not get through any of them if we don't have any funding.
Yeah. Just to clarify, so that this year's funding is provided for, as far as I understand, but you're right, subsequent years will be subject.
This year, 20 grand, do I remember?
For this council, 20,000 is our contribution as a member council. And so these funds will be
150 over the 4 years forward.
Yeah. There's 7 councils, sorry Ash, you must be out of the room. 7 councils, 20 grand a year, 140 a year, times 4 years. There's plenty of money to fund it, but ERA may have other priorities, such as in the aged care area or the water project or something else that might compete with this for funding. And when I asked us for top-up funding, it's a risk suggesting.
That's right. If that's the case, I'll be reporting back to you as a council.
Now, and who runs this from your end, the CEOs?
CEOs just oversee progress on the project. The Eastern Region Environment Group, as a group, meet together, and they're the ones that are driving this action plan. So it really is just a process of the group voluntarily working together, reporting to the CEO group endorsing or otherwise the projects, and then referring back to their councils as necessary. So it's a fairly loose arrangement.
Not an outside chair that's not local government?
No, there isn't at the moment. The Eastern Region Alliance has a fairly loose governance structure, and it should be something that should be focused on in the future as to how it operates. But at this time, it's quite a simple, put-together process.
I mean, it's just such a crucial thing that could be worth so much to, no disrespect, but to have a bunch of people whose life is local government rather than a chair that has a fabulous understanding of the outside world and economic development. Because CEOs can just go, I mean, one change of CEO can throw everything up in the ball, you know. I mean, I'm always in favour of having a chair to guide with the experience of the outside world of running this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the Eastern Region Alliance has been in place for probably 4 to 5 years now. It has been done so on a voluntary basis under a memorandum of understanding, and there's just simply a grouping of councils. In the future, I see there is potential for it to mature and become a more robust, very clearly set up organisation.
It's starting to get more serious now. That's the point I make. And
so it's a maturing process, and it may well be that we're at that critical point where we need to look at the structure.
Yeah, ERA Economic Development was established in 2011.
yeah. It's just the competing nature of 5 councils. To have somebody sitting there in the middle that isn't part of the competition could be valuable.
Certainly take that back. Is there anything else that anyone wants to raise? I mean, to me, I think it's fairly logical, and there'll be further reports to council on this.
No, I think it's good. I think it doesn't talk about direct employment ventures so much as programs and investigating and providing the support framework for ventures. Because I don't think us competing with other councils to get an actual business here is very productive. We're better off just going and doing that ourselves. This is at a higher level, which I think is more strategic, which I think will be very useful. The only other thing I want to say is that the Metropolitan Group of Councils are very interested in economic development, and it just today, in fact, commissioned a half-day seminar for local government to show case studies, show what's working. They've invited us to talk about our Prospect Road Village Heart, about how that was done, other traders, how they've reacted to it, the low vacancy rates and all the rest of the stuff. But also what other councils have done that actually has worked for their local economy, and to share those ideas and to work out what role local government does play in economic development. But I think it's still a little bit fuzzy. I think we've got a very strong role, but exactly what we should do and shouldn't do is still a little undefined. So that's coming up, and I know that there are other people. Adelaide Uni ran a really great workshop last week who were looking at economic development at a much higher, more scientific level, and some of those players look specifically at local government as well for us to have a role in that, which I found very interesting. So there's a lot of threads that are going to come together, I think, increasingly over the next 5 years around our role in economic development. So this is just, to me, a very sensible part of that discussion.
Okay, I think we've probably got all we need to for tonight on this. The process from here, Chris, what do you think?
I think from here we'll bring the action plan to council for endorsement. We'll try to labour it with some additional information around some of the actions that are contained within that, and also some indication that we will be pursuing, looking into some targets and reporting on the outcomes and objectives that are contained within that as part of the process.
Okay, everyone cool with that?
Yep. Good. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jen, for coming along. That was really, really helpful. We'll move on to the next item now, which is the Development Assessment Panel Complaint Handling Policy. So, Chris, if you could help us with this one.
Any questions for me?
Hello.
Thank you.
Bye.
I was getting lonely as an elected member. Down to 3. Oh, Alan's not there.
Alan's just momentarily out of the room.
Oh, he's gone.
To return.
Right.
Towards that.
It's always full in this room.
If we're going to
Yeah.
Is that your first presentation?
Yeah.
And I didn't say so.
All flat. No.
Well, well done.
Oh, you're doing it all my life.
Okay, after all that dry talk about playgrounds and economic development plans, but that complaint handling policy, we tried to have a look at some slight revisions to the current policy. We brought that to a workshop recently, and I was sent away to have a look at what some other councils have done to address similar problems or similar processes in terms of the way that councils receive, investigate and respond to complaints that are raised. So I've circulated a number of different examples, but I thought in doing that I had to go back to, did you say circulated? Yeah, circulated.
What?
Some examples, yes, to all elected members. I got comments back from Christina about the different complaints handling policies that have gone.
Actually, that's the bit I did see, the bit you got back.
So it's a good thing that I went back to first principles then and decided that we're probably better off just having a look at what we're trying to achieve by having a DAP complaints handling policy, because that can then inform the form that our policy takes. Because reviewing other policies, I see that there's opportunities to take a couple of different approaches. So I just want to be comfortable that councils are comfortable with the approach that's taken by a public officer and then our presiding member of the DAP and any other parties that are involved in the investigation, so that there's sufficient clarity and transparency and consistency in the approach taken. So there's a terms of reference for the Prospect DAP. That really covers off on operating procedures primarily, and then reflects a lot of what's contained in legislation in terms of responsibilities, membership, the functions of the DAP. So it's relatively straightforward. It's a document that's established by in consultation with the Development Assessment Panel, because it goes over into operating procedures. So under the Development Act, there aren't any specific operating procedures that are prescribed for the DAP. That's almost at the discretion of the panel, but informed by council. The Code of Conduct, on the other hand, is legislated. So there is a Minister's Code of Conduct under Section 21A of the Local Government Act that covers off on probably member behaviour in terms of what they do during the course of the meeting, evaluating a proposal, as well as outside of that meeting. So our current complaints handling policy notes that, well, really dictates what happens with a complaint when it's received. The complaint must be in writing, must be made to the public officer. The public officer must then acknowledge receipt of that complaint, request the information, refer it on to the presiding member once he's categorised the severity of the complaint. So we discussed briefly the previous workshop, the levels 1, 2 and 3. Level 1 is for fairly minor nature complaints that do with activities during the meeting itself, which can generally be resolved through referral to the presiding member. Level 2 complaints are slightly more serious and relate to breaches of the Ministerial Code of Conduct. And level 3 complaints are those that are of a more illegal or criminal nature.
Or what? Or repeated twos.
Yeah. Under the current policy, those complaints that are categorised as level 1 are referred to the presiding member for investigation and response to the public officer. The difficulty with that is when it's a level 1 complaint, say about meeting procedures, against the presiding member, then it sort of defaults that the public officer must, under the terms of our current policy, refer it to the local government governance panel. There's some concerns around that, particularly when the local governance panel only wants to hear complaints about elected members. So that's a fundamental flaw in the policy, and I'm glad to see that it's reflected as a fundamental flaw in other council policies as well. So we're not alone in this predicament. What we've done by establishing this policy and this hard and fast approach to the investigation, one, we've made a rod for our own back in terms of trying to refer to a local governance panel about a member who's not a presiding member, a member who's not an elected member, sorry. The other thing is we're restricting the ability of the public officer to actually call in the necessary assistance to properly investigate that complaint. So in doing that, we're basically saying our public officer has to have a hands-off approach. Now, council actually selects and appoints a public officer under section 56A of the Development Act. And in doing so, the council should have the confidence that that public officer has the ability to perform the duties that are required of that position. One of those duties is the investigation and determination of complaints. So in undertaking that investigation, liaising with independent advisors, legal advisors, with the complainant, with the member to whom the complaint was made about, the public officer should have some freedom of approach. If we limit it, we restrict what can be done. What it ends up with at the end of the process is a determination and recommendation. So at the end of the process, the public officer, assisted by advisors or the presiding member, depending on how the policy is being set up, has the ability to then report back to council, who then can suggest imposing some penalty or some direction on the member against whom the complaint was made, and obviously a response to the complaint. Raises an interesting dilemma, because one of the concerns that was raised by elected members is what council does for education and mediation for a particular member of the DAP. On review of the legislation, council's ability is to either appoint or to discharge a DAP member. So while council can make recommendations or suggestions that education and training and mediation be undertaken, there's no requirement under the Act that be followed. So it's only if that was factored into the terms of reference that's set by council up front and included or indoctrinated in the appointment process. So when the council appoints DAP members,
The contract or the equivalent thereof.
yeah. So that would need to be factored in there. So quickly, I'm seeing that this review of the policy is revealing other documents that need to be revised just to ensure that we're consistent across the board.
That's a good pick up. Chris, fundamentally, has anybody else solved this in South Australia to your satisfaction?
Charles Sturt has gone a long way towards doing that. Charles Sturt actually based their complaints handling policy on the LGA model. So the LGA model policy was prepared in collaboration with, I think it was Wallman's lawyers, off the top of my head. They've actually had a look at adopting that policy, tweaking it to their own purposes, and then they've actually then referred that on to another legal advisor. So they actually engaged Norman Waterhouse to review that. Norman Waterhouse have actually done quite a bit of chopping and changing in the whole policy to remove some of these step-by-step approaches that actually restrict the ability of the public officer to do their job. Because by setting in train a particular process, you remove that flexibility, and some complaints that may be across multiple levels, it might be level 1 and level 2 complaint in terms of the complete nature, it doesn't give us the ability to separate that effectively under the current policy. So by removing that and just providing some examples and perhaps clarifying that you can treat with different levels of complaint within the one complaint and have different bodies consider that. So level 3 complaint, for example, that alleged illegal or criminal behaviour, but also contains some reference to a breach of the code of conduct that would be considered a level 2 complaint. At the moment, there's no clarity or no direction in terms of what we do with the level 2 complaint. So level 3, we refer that off to the police or the ombudsman for investigation. And level 2, what do we do with that? Do we, given that there may be this parallel investigation going on, do we sit on that until that investigation is resolved?
So would an example be a level 2 failure to declare a conflict of interest? And level 3 being actually voting on an item where there was a clear conflict of interest?
Yes.
So what you're saying is you don't want to get tied up waiting for the item 3 to be solved or level 3 to be solved before you action level 2.
Yeah. And I think because each complaint will be unique, there isn't it's difficult to apply hard and fast rules when it comes to these sorts of complaints. So there needs to be built in some flexibility and some trust in the public officer to perform the duties of the position. And ultimately, depending on the severity of the complaint and the nature of that, to report that back to council. So the outcome of the investigation not only goes to the complainant and the member of the DAP, it also goes back to council. So there is that transparency. Council can then determine if you got repeated complaints or even one serious complaint, whether it's appropriate for that DAP member to continue to serve on the panel. So that's something that council might recommend, some education and mediation, but ultimately if that recommendation is ignored, council then could then reconsider whether they think it's appropriate that DAP member can continue on the DAP. So that approach could be reflected in policy but shouldn't be directed in that policy.
So does the Charles Sturt one have that as an option, that the council would remove a member from the panel?
Yep.
What would we do now if we wanted to do that? We just make a decision of council and that's the end of that?
Yep. Obviously you'd need to demonstrate the reasons to why they're removed.
Would we? I'm not being cute.
In terms of in the interest of natural justice,
yeah, sure.
They're performing to the requirement for the position and they've entered into an agreement to provide that service or that representation of council on the DAP. You remove them for no reason within their 2-year appointment. I think there could be some recourse for that DAP member. If there wasn't.
I'll let you take the question on notice because whether you pay a lawyer to get an answer or not, I'm not so sure. But sometimes you don't want to spell out all the reasons why you want to get rid of the DAP member because spelling the reasons out might cause you more pain than just saying, you know what, it was nice, but it's over. It's only it's a modest stipend and they're 2-year terms, aren't they? Yeah. Well, I just wonder, could we just say, you know what, sorry, see ya.
I'd be surprised if you could, because reputations start to come into play, and that's what you've got to be very wary of. That in doing so, you affect somebody's reputation.
But that's what I'm worried about. We're such an open level of government. If we have to spell out all the reasons, we may actually decide we don't want to go down that path because that'll cause us more pain.
Sure, but if you don't spell them out, then...
It'll cause you more pain.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily. That's what I'm just interested in.
But that would be the only key thing, just reputation, because you're hiring professionals. And...
Chris, where can we see Child Stir? Because it's not in the ones that you provided, and I've just been searching their website and can't find it anywhere.
Hidden.
Hmm.
So I don't even know whether they've adopted it.
So no member of the public can find it.
No one knows what to do.
How's that, governance manager?
Perfect governance, boy.
Perfect, yeah.
Hidden within their council. So that's as close as I've come to the actual document. I'll need to track it down.
And are they sitting on it because there might be problems around it, because they've...
Just working the way through it for me.
You throw a couple of lawyers at policy, pretty quickly and it's almost a when it comes to this sort of policy, but it's more of a procedure. What this policy is doing is establishing a procedure that the public officer should follow in investigating a complaint, rather than a true policy direction of council.
And what's currently wrong with that? It's just up for review.
It sets up that we actually, well, it's up for review, and it sets up that we actually have to refer certain complaints to the local governance panel, even if the LGGP don't consider complaints about industry.
Who does then?
We do. So the council's public officer, with advice from an independent legal advisor. So some policies set up a group of legal advisors that could be engaged. So others would leave it at the discretion.
If it's bad enough, you just report it to the police.
So in terms of legislative requirements, I've covered off on them. So this is really what the Act spells out. This is what can be done under the legislation. We're not making stuff up. We're not playing in a grey area here. Public officer must ensure proper investigation of complaints. Complaints don't have to be made to council. They can also be made direct to the Ombudsman.
So that's how you deal with the independent members?
No. So that's anyone in the community who's aggrieved by the machinations of that can make a complaint direct to the Ombudsman rather than making that complaint to the public officer. In some circumstances, under some legislative instruments, it dictates who you can actually make a complaint to. Under the Development Act, you can either make it to the public officer or you can make it to the Ombudsman. And there's also a question about the form that complaint must be made in. There's nothing prescribed under the Act in terms of the complaint being made in writing, as far as I can tell. Public officer may refer the complaint to another person or authority for investigation. So that is legislated. It's a may, it's not a must. So what we've done in the policy is we've established a must, where council's public officer must refer a certain complaint to another person or authority, whereas it's a may. So that's a discretionary ability that's afforded to the public officer of council. The council's actually restricted public officer's ability to perform his duties. Council may remove that member for failure to comply with the code of conduct. Any questions? I will take it on notice. It could be that simple. Yeah. In terms of the policy considerations, public officer must ensure the proper investigation of complaints, be able to exercise discretion on how to deal with those complaints. Any disagreement there, or any concerns or queries, do you think that's a reasonable statement to make up front?
Well, it puts a fair bit of pressure on the public officer, both to make a decision on their own and also to withstand criticism of that decision. So I don't have a problem with it in principle, provided that there is sufficient guidance provided to the public officer. So if it's not a step-by-step process, then it might be a suggested pathways or a have you considered the following sort of thing.
These are really just ground rules for policy. So your concern is covered off under the second ground rule. Public officer may refer the complaint to another person or body for investigation and or determination, and effectively push it over to someone else to deal with it and undertake that investigation, make that recommendation, so that it's done in part. And as well as they may continue to participate in the investigation. They're not necessarily at arm's length. It doesn't need to be completely independent.
Maybe with a technical expert or a lawyer assistant. Okay, yep.
And the investigator, so whoever undertakes that investigation, should determine whether there was a breach of the Minister's Code, the DAP operating procedures, the Development Act or regulations, or other relevant law which might come into the investigation undertaken by the Ombudsman or the police, depending on the severity of the matter. So it should be a determination that covers off on those issues. So that's where some independent advice is probably a good idea, but it doesn't necessarily need to be mandatory, particularly where it's a frivolous or vexatious complaint that's been made, where there isn't any substance to it. How far should the public officer need to go to arrive at a determination? So categorising the complaint should provide guidance for how a complaint is investigated, and but in doing so, categorising complaints can reduce the flexibility that's required to investigate. If it's railroaded into a particular process, then it might fall off the tracks and not be investigated properly. Imposing sanctions, recommendations for suspension or removal of DAP members must be dealt with by council as the body appointed the DAP member, and a DAP member cannot be forced to participate in training and mediation. So these are the fundamental ground rules from my review of other policy and policy that I think works. Any concerns with those?
Yeah, two of one puzzles me a bit. Categorising complaints, it may reduce the flexibility, but that's a statement that it does. I don't quite understand that to be necessarily the case.
That's a good point. It does when it's connected with a particular workflow.
I agree it might, but yeah, I'd probably just change that to
obviously at the end of the process informing the complainant and keeping them in the loop through the whole process. So acknowledging receipt of their complaint, giving them time frames for likely resolution of that complaint, updates during the investigation, and ultimately the advice for determination.
And that force, are you talking any DAP member, elected or otherwise, or are you talking the professional body?
I'm talking any DAP member.
Well, this is an instruction from council. So why would council not be able to instruct an elected member?
Because it's an elected member performing their role as a member of the DAP. And that's a distinction that we often make. I'll take that on notice and get
at the grace of council, though.
Yes, but we often make that distinction at the DAP between the role of an elected member of council.
Yeah.
And DAP.
But you can't have an elected member to participate in any sort of training and mediation anyway, can you? So,
well, under the new code, Under the old code we couldn't, under the new code we can.
I'll make a note of that. Why wouldn't we be able to go to it? I mean, we may not be able to force someone to do something, but we can decide to withdraw them from the DAP.
Exactly. Well, that's
If they don't. So we say, we'd like you to do the training, you can choose not to. If you don't, we will remove you from the DAP.
Yeah.
Or if you don't complete the training successfully and genuinely, well, they just turn up and have your number taken.
So it's a sort of a de facto forcing.
Yes.
So it should be included within it. Cannot be forced, however, can be removed from DAP. So that there's an understanding in the reading that you're damned one way or the other.
Just to wrap up, I'll resend the models through, the other policies.
So we found, it's because the way the thing's set up, it doesn't come up with your initial one, it comes up with the last person who said something. And it's just Christine, so there's no offence to Christine.
There's a number of different approaches that have been taken. Some of them expand to include the role of the public officer in addition to the complaints handling policy. It's based on the LGA model. Some councils have adopted the LGGP approach and others have adopted the independent assessor approach. I think either way, it's got to be, which is what our initial revision came back to workshop with elected members, was trying to get that back in there so that there is that discretionary ability. I think there's some more work that follows on from that in relation to the code of conduct in terms of reference.
Contracts for people. But you could wrap it up in the motion to council, couldn't you, as part of a package of changes. Where do you think the proposal you came up with at the last workshop we discussed this, how close are we or how far are we away from where you now think we should be?
I think the previous approach I brought to the workshop is fundamentally flawed. It's based on policy that restricts, that puts in place too many restrictions or directions. So it's a matter of trying to tear that back so that it provides some assistance to the public officer in investigating and determining complaints, but doesn't direct the public officer. Okay. So what I'd be looking at doing is paring it back to really look at ways of entrenching a flexible approach.
Okay. And just to round out the comparisons with other councils, how many of these have been tested code of conduct complaints?
I'm not aware of any.
Terrific.
I can do some research into that. I'll take that on notice.
We didn't know the life raft sank until we tried it for the very first time.
That's how we...
Middle of the ocean.
Part of the reason we're here.
One thing I'd like to see part of it, which really came out of a recent spate of code of conduct from this council, A, for the ability of the responsible officer to decide something is frivolous, forget about it, and make it utterly clear, and or the ability, if the concern is between two members and or a member and the chair, to look at mediation. In other words, sit down, talk, get over it, move on. I think it was a lesson we learned on this council. That wasn't handled well, and should be written into ours. And in a way, you said it yourself, the ability for the responsible officer to sometimes simply make decisions quick and easy. It's very low level. Let's kill it off.
Without necessitating a referral to the LGGP.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Is what would happen. Is there any general thoughts around that? Building in those? I heard that generally.
I don't think the complaints we'll get will be stuff that people want to mediate, so to speak. I think it'll be about genuine concern that panel members have brought a conflict into the chamber and it's not been declared, or they've got some kind of interest in the matter which is beyond what they should have, or they come unbiased to a decision in some way. I'm not sure you can mediate those sorts of things.
I don't disagree, David, and for those you wouldn't. But I could well see, for example, in our previous iteration where some councillors, when their councillors wanted to go 6, 7, 8, or me 20 stories, and others wanted to only build underground, and they're both on DAP, and you've got a 6-storey in front of you, you can get some suddenly across the table aggro, and
Sure.
and I think you've just got to allow for that.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen, next year, the year after, next. But I generally agree you wouldn't expect it. It's just you've got to allow for it.
Part of the code of conduct is it's the mutual respect of other members of the DAP, so that's where mediation could come into.
Yeah.
I think for behavioural stuff, yes, I'm less concerned about that because generally it seems like they're a pretty well behaved bunch of people. I'm more concerned about the public's ability to commence proceedings if they believe there's been a decision which has been made influenced by bias. At the moment, they can only go to the Ombudsman, and I think that's a kind of a, it's almost a pathway of last resort. I'd rather that they could come to us and say, your panel's not functioning properly because I can see this is what I allege has happened, and we've got a process to work through it, which is specific to DAPs, because the Ombudsman is very general in administrative terms.
And both of those scenarios relate to the decision of the DAP and the conduct of the individual member, rather than, say, taking the approach of lodging an application for judicial review with the court to then put a stay or suspend that approval if it wasn't approved, so that then the actual nature of the decision made by the DAP can be challenged in that regard. What happens with the public officer and the investigation, the Ombudsman, that's not actually interrogating the decision made.
Yeah.
It's the conduct that led to that decision being made. So it wouldn't actually quash that approval.
Yes, I think
it's an important distinction to make, and I think that should be reflected in the policy. That there are other avenues for complaint.
Parallel.
About that. People are waiting on the outcome of the investigation and potentially miss their window of opportunity to lodge an application for judicial review.
Absolutely. So that's where you're talking about before the public officer might initiate 2 things or 3 things at the same time. So one might go up to the district court, the other one might be a code of conduct complaint, and maybe there's an Ombudsman inquiry about some kind of related matter, and they can all happen together rather than waiting for one before you go to the other, before you go to the other. I think that's entirely sensible. What I'm concerned about, though, is not so much the drama of a decision hinging on one vote, and that one vote being the one that you're challenging. I think often it can be a consensus decision, but one person shouldn't have participated in the decision. And it's the reputation of the DAP that's at risk, not the outcome. The outcome everyone else agreed with, or mostly, right? But the DAP is seen as being compromised because someone who participated in that decision, unanimous or not, perhaps shouldn't have. In that circumstance, I think it's more a code of conduct issue. It's probably not a district court issue, because a district court will go straight to, well, how many people voted for it and how many against? All 7 voted for it. So either you're here, sir, to claim that 4 people had a conflict of interest and it should be overturned. If it's about one person, don't waste my time. See you later. So you know, sometimes a conflict of interest matter doesn't give rise to a district court action. It's a reputation issue. So I think a code would help us, would help the public feel that they had a way to deal with that.
I think that gives me enough to go on, and I'll hopefully wrap it up.
The process from here is you just do a bit of a review of the draft.
Keep on jigging.
Work. Target date, Chris.
Start date, something or other. I'm aiming to have something to you for the July meeting. I was targeting June, but given that I uncovered some additional work I need to do, we'll aim for July.
All right. We've just got a couple more things to deal with, and Carolyn is here just to give a separate presentation after the workshop. So just to finish off, just want to let you know there's no workshop next week. There's a break. There's a workshop after the council meeting on the 24th, though. So I had a regular council meeting on the 24th. Hopefully that'll be a short council meeting, and there'll be a short workshop after that. The intent of that workshop is for Ginny to be able to give you an outline or summary of the consultation that has been undertaken in relation to the business plan. So that's the intent.
Yeah, the intent is to discuss if there's any budget alterations after the consultation. The consultation, the report will go to council in June. So we need to have a workshop to reconsider any budget adjustment, if any, and following week we will put the budget for adoption to first week of July.
Which is a special council meeting on the 1st of July. And then we'll have a workshop following that special meeting. So it's just a reversing of the thing. So everyone okay with that? No workshop next week, and then there'll be further work from there. Brendan just wants to talk a little bit about fees and charges.
Yep, that's
and then
okay.
we'll conclude the meeting, and then we'll go on to the presentation.
Actually, just two things very quickly. One thing was to do with Deb Richardson, and I hand over to me. Maybe promise to report back to elected members that the results of a conversation we had with the Digital Hub funders, and she actually asked me to pursue to reduce the requirement of council next year's budget towards that program, and I can say from talking to the funding body we've achieved that through reduction in the staffing requirements for Digital Hub and also for the speed of the broadband going to the Digital Hub. Apparently Deb was explaining they were quite rigid in terms of the requirements there, and they're actually less rigid now, so we're looking at a saving in the vicinity of $20,000 from next council's budget next year. So just a quick one following up from what Deb had asked me to do. The other one is that with regard to council's fees and charges that we discussed at last week's workshop. We've actually been approached by one of the regular hires of Prospect Town Hall. So it's a group that's been in there for the last 3 years or so. They're called the Jam, the Mix and the Gig. You may have heard of them. They're a mental health initiative, and they first came to use the Prospect Town Hall thanks to the Folk Federation bringing them in there. So don't hold that against them, but they came on board for that. It's a really worthwhile group. It's one of a very rare example of positive mental health initiative. It's funded by Arts SA and also state through SA Health, and they've approached me, and they've said that next year's fees and charges for their use of Prospect Town Hall, which is a weekly booking and 2 times a year to run an event for their group. They're unable to afford that because of rigid sort of funding restrictions on them, and they've asked that...
They've lost their funding, are you saying?
They've not lost it, but it's been reduced for next year. So they're coming to us and saying that essentially they cannot afford to continue running there without some assistance, and I wanted to put selected members that we could actually put a reduction specifically for that group, the Jam, the Mix and the Gig, into next year's fees and charges with regard to their use of Prospect Town Hall.
I don't mind you putting it up, that's for sure. Just detail it and let us know.
Okay.
It's kind of the start of an avalanche to do this sort of stuff.
Sure, but you've got to look at it first and then decide yes or no. I mean,
well, there are other halls that are available. It's a regular program. Can't they use the community hall or the Nailsworth Hall?
They could. It's very much a music-based program. It's they have a large, sort of like a rock band that they continue.
Very loud.
Very loud, and it's a very big user, and it's a really worthwhile program. And one of the few sort of examples of the use of the town hall that I believe was the intent from elected members for use for benefit of the community.
Second suggestion: we've got a community grants program out now. We encourage them to apply for a community grant which covers the discounted cost of the hall. So the second person comes along and says, "I'm even better than them." They can say, "Well, they got a grant to get the discount."
do you know what the different costing differences?
Well, I'm suggesting that is a 10% reduction on the local not-for-profit. So really, over a period of a year, would only account for us in the vicinity of $2,500. So it's not. I'm not talking about a big use. It's a weekly use.
I think that is a good one. They'd go for the grant first, and then Right.
Okay. Yep. Can do that.
We do have a great deal with the Maltese RSL. They get a special rate. So there is.
Do they?
That's the community hall, though, isn't it?
That's the Prospect Community Hall. Yeah.
Maltese RSL.
Charlie.
Oh, they get a special rate.
Be a long story.
It's a long story. It's a long history. Yeah, it's actually a very long story, that one. So
I think the community grant option is a good, clear way to.
That's the wild one.
Yes.
The Prospect absolutely, yes, I believe it's worthwhile. Absolutely, yes.
Not this one, the Maltese one.
They're all worthwhile.
Okay, we need to move on. So you happy with that?
Happy with that. Thanks.
So that'll be part of the grants program. Now, we finish off. So anything else on the right, Alan?
Yeah, he most probably done it, but I wanted to raise it in the meeting to put through. I'm not much of bloody kings and queens and all that sort of stuff, but Uncle Lewis got an award on Australia Day, and I think the involvement he's had with our council, I'd like to ask for this meeting to the mayor, rather than wait until council meeting, could he send him on our behalf, congratulations letter.
They don't come from kings or queens, though. Only the Danes came from the Queen.
Yes. You can find out the details of what he got, the citation, and the chance for something up. Be happy to do it. Yeah.
All I had.
Thanks. All right, we might finish the workshop off there. So, can you conclude the recording, please?